Let's get started. I think Superintendent Gall is going to join us momentarily. Good afternoon. Welcome back all. Today is the first day of school. A lot of energy and excitement. I was at first day of school. Yeah, first day of school. I was at Freedom and Scott this morning, and Freedom had the cheerleaders from Jenkins. I think middle school starts tomorrow, so they got the 8th graders out there with their pom-poms, and they had a red carpet out there, and the students running and high-fiving. A lot of excitement, music in the air, and a lot of big smiles. Staff were excited, so I'm sure that is kind of what Superintendent Gall, you went to several schools. I was talking to Deborah. Deborah said she was at 11 schools today. So
nice work.
Yeah, all of you, I'm sure, attended several schools, a lot of excitement. So welcome back to our students and staff, and here we go again, start of another academic year. And with that, do you want to have?
I do. I'm going to do a
ahead.
little hi, welcome back,
Yep.
and how excited we are. And just to catch all the listeners up, all of Executive Cabinet partnered with our area superintendents today. And so we had massive on-site support. I would imagine area superintendents got to all their schools or nearly all their schools, and will certainly get to any ones that they didn't get to today, tomorrow. Elementary schools, 6th grade and 9th grade all attended today, and then existing middle schoolers and high schoolers, their first day will be tomorrow. Lots of presence of existing middle schoolers and high schoolers today as link crews to be ambassadors for our matriculating 6th and 9th graders. Incredible energy in our district right now, soup to nuts, tip to tail, cradle to grave. Everybody's excited. Staff, community members, parents, students, ESP certified staff, exec pros. I just am on such a high right now and feeling an incredible amount of energy. Everybody has been a contributor to this work. We have such exciting data that's getting ready to drop between our CMAS results, where we believe that we're going to be on enrollment. I am continually getting pulled by parents who say, thank you for restoring faith in our school district. I met a mom today with 7 kids who attend 5 different schools in our system. And she said, it took me a long time to figure out that each one of my kids has a specific need. And I'm so excited that District 11 can fulfill that need in the portfolio of schools that you've offered to us. So it's just been so much incredible energy out there. My primary focus for the first 2 days will be all comprehensive high schools, because that is still our areas of greatest risk on both achievement and enrollment and how we are perceived in our community, and all new principals. And our new principals have felt incredible support for the hiring that we've gotten for them, for the instructional materials and strategies they've had through PD, and just through the tremendous support by all of the board and the community in saying, we are District 11, and the only time you'll ever get me to do math wrong is in District 11, 1 + 1 = 11, right? We're gonna be the #1 school for enrollment. We will be the #1 schools for growth, and then they'll be the #1 school for achievement. That's our guarantee.
111.
Yeah, that's right. Well, growth turns into achievement. I like that. And I'm going to delay for just a second while Shauna pulls up a video here. I asked comms to take a different look. Last year, we did a great job of following me around, and there were some humiliating and embarrassing videos of me dancing with cheerleaders, and it's always great that the superintendent can be out. But this year, we took a different twist, and we armed a couple of students with some GoPros. And we took, what does it look like from a student's perspective? Because our ultimate customer is the student. Now, as the adults at the table, we feel sometimes that our customer are our parents, because they pay the taxes and they're the ones who come to the podium, and they're certainly the ones that chirp in our ear. But ultimately, a student-focused district, our customer are students. Are we going to get close there, Shauna?
Thinking about learning how to pull up Instagram.
You're up and you're just waiting for it to show up, or you're still logging in?
I'm waiting for it to open.
Okay, anybody else in schools that want to give a quick share out? I'll ask my team that's at the table or on the sides.
Looks like only Scott Mendelsberg is here. The other area superintendents are out and about in schools too.
Yeah, so we've changed some of what we're asking for Exec Pro. If you've got something to do at a work session, you're here, and if you don't, you can take that time.
Perfect.
So we trying to give back to our team and the work that they've been able to provide. Scott, any observations today?
I can just tell you, we were on a stream, all the exec cab, on a text stream. And to just piggyback on what Mike said, we were all excited because it was just so different than it was last year. And we had a good day last year, first day, but nothing like this. I mean, everywhere I went, I ran into other people on our team, but I think everybody got to every single one of their schools today, and we were all sending pictures back and forth. It was just a fantastic start.
I would add that nobody sat down for these conversations. So every person I was talking to, MC over at Bijou has her cart, like she's rolling. I mean, literally, like every meeting was a walking, standing meeting. There was no sitting, there was no stopping involved. So even as we were visiting, or as I was visiting, it was work that was happening. So.
All right, we'll pivot, we'll get back on schedule here. You all can just not worry about that. We'll share it with everybody that's here and or just check out our social media. What I'll ask you to look at is when you see the video of the student at Queen Palmer, none of us have ever seen Christina Butcher from a 3.5-foot perspective. Now, I've seen Principal Butcher from about that perspective as she's demanding more supports from me and from the district. But just how rewarding it is to see how a student navigates Queen Palmer and to hear a student voice and to see them enter their classroom and to see them be greeted by their friends in the welcome learning environment. I'll look at our social media, there'll be more of it to share in coming days. So I thank the comms team for taking a risk like that. Because of course, the first concern was we don't want to see kids in the bathroom. So we gave the GoPros to kids and say, don't take them in the bathroom. All right, I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Comfort.
So let me set that up before we get there. By the way, I mean, we have 6 board members in attendance out here in person, and Director Art is joining us remotely. So we have all 7 board members in attendance today. And are we still trying to figure out that video?
You go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah,
if you have an opportunity to share it or it's ready to go, let us know. We would still like to see Christina Butcher from a 3.5-foot perspective. With that, thank you for sharing. I mean, my thoughts of feedback was the same thing, the energy and excitement that I felt this morning for just, I was there only for 20 minutes, but talking to the parents, talking to the staff.
As an anecdote, just because I know you were at Scott, the playground at Scott's not done. It's not done. The front end loader or the side swivel, what's it called?
It was a skid steer that got
Skid
stolen.
steer. The skid steer got stolen from a previous job site. This time last year, if I walked into Scott's before school open house where I was last night or the night before, community members would have came up to me and said, typical D11, can't get the playground open. When I was at Scott, I had at least a dozen parents come up to me and say, thank you for a playground at Scott. We understand the skid steer got stolen. It's not gonna open for what, 2 or 4 weeks or whatever it's gonna take to get it installed, whatever, you don't have to answer that. But they're appreciative of the fact that we're investing in their playground. They believe that we are invested in their children and what is the experience of a learned institution. And that one anecdote said to me, we're over the hump. Now we're just gonna accelerate to the finish line. The parents believe that we're gonna do it. They're not complaining that it's not done. There are always gonna be insurmountable obstacles, but we will always find a way around them to get them done. So thank you to all the teams that got that in place.
No?
Are we ready?
Oh, yeah,
Is
go
it
ahead.
okay?
Is it perfect?
Yeah, we're ready.
Before
So-
we, how do we lose a skid steerer?
It's not ours, right? It's a contract.
Those are contractors.
Contractors. Don't leave your keys in your skid steer. And the volume's gonna work?
Well, I mean,
I'm asking a lot.
we're gonna give it our good college effort here.
That new turf is awesome.
There's Butcher. Alright, if you don't wanna hang up your backpack and go in Miss Jones's class right now, then you are just in the wrong business. Okay, over to you, President Alpaca.
With that, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for
Sean.
that introduction and
Thanks.
great way to start the school year. The work session topics, the first one is academic support plan, and tied into that is certificate of participation discussion. We have Doug Abernathy from RTA Architects, and then we also have Patrick Davis. They've been doing the academic support plan and periodically giving board updates. I think they worked through the summer. You guys didn't get a break, did you? So they're going to first talk about that academic support plan and tied in. First, I'll hand it over to Dr. Comfort. Is that, do
Yep.
you have anything to say, Dr. Comfort?
This all speaks for itself, go ahead.
Okay.
Thanks for the opportunity tonight. President Malpack, and thanks for calling out RTA and Perkins Eastman. They haven't had a break. I have daily conversations that say, hey, Patrick, can we talk for 5 minutes today? Can we talk for 5 minutes today? Can we talk for 5 minutes today? And every time he says yes. But I also want you to see that this is a more comprehensive effort. You see the Capitol team in attendance today. You see representatives from Snyder Electric. You see Mr. Chisholm, who's supporting the district. So we are trying to bring coherence to all of the concepts around the recapitalization of the district so that that kind of makes sense. So today we're going to talk a little bit about exploring the potential benefits of a COP in District 11. The presentation we're going to talk a little bit about a timeline, some details. We'll provide some local context, and then Perkins Eastman and RTA will kind of take off with their presentation. Also want to share, obviously, this has been done in lots of coordination with Ms. Odom, not just because of her work last year, but her continued support in the facility impact moving forward. So we have a really large team effort going into this. In terms of a schedule, here's where we are. Tonight, we're having the initial project and funding discussion. We're going to stay pretty high level tonight. We're going to look to seek lots of input from the board about their thoughts. We'll come back in 2 weeks for a deeper dive into the potential project list. Perkins Eastman and RTA will facilitate that conversation based on your feedback. Then we'll come back in another 2 weeks and we'll have a really in-depth discussion around financing and funding, and that will be primarily conducted by whoever we choose for underwriting and bond servicing. And then if the board chooses, it would then move forward into a non-action and then potential action. So I wanted to kind of show the schedule so that you can see there's going to be lots of opportunities to provide feedback, consider your questions, and then bring them back to the larger team. Okay, so in terms of what is a COP, the district has a history with COPs, so I apologize for repeating anything. It is a certificate of participation. What I can tell you, when you Google certificate of participation, you get a lot of certificates of participation for schools, not a lot about COPs in school districts. So just so you know. It is a lease obligation. It's not viewed as formal debt under the Colorado Constitution. It's because it's annually obligated. It is repaid traditionally from the general fund or other school district resources. We are taking into consideration the MLO capital budget as the primary source, but that can all be a part of the discussion. It does not represent, it does not represent any new taxes for the taxpayer. This isn't a bond. It services much like a bond, but we don't go to the taxpayer and ask them for any more money. Obviously, with what's coming up this November around assessed values and property taxes, It's a very challenging time to go to the community and ask for more money. We do have some local districts that are going to do that. We think that we can utilize our current resources in a more significant way to recapitalize our district. Something else to note, it can be refunded, which in our terms means refinance. So it's like a mortgage on a house. When the interest rate goes down and you want to refinance it, we do have that option. There's more structure to it in a COP, but that opportunity is there. And it can also be called early, which means we can pay that debt off earlier than the rate of the loan. And then finally, because it is no new taxes to our general public, it does not require voter approval from our community. All right, so why now? We are really looking to maximize our current funding to significantly address facility needs. Here's what I'll tell you. Our capital budget is actually larger than almost everybody's, right? Our operating budget is around $18 to $20 million. Our neighbors to the north, their capital budget is $3 million a year. What I can tell you though is every single school district has to utilize other sources to recapitalize their district beyond their capital budget. So that's typically bonds or capital MLOs or COPs. So we want to look to maximize our current resources to do more significant projects because ultimately there's an opportunity cost of waiting. In the slideshow presentation, and Perkins Eastman will discuss this tonight, but you saw a slide that discusses the COP, the renovation of Adams Elementary that happened 7-8 years ago. And at that point in time, that cost us $7-8 million. Today, that would cost us about $15 million. In a decade, that would run us about $30 million with just normal inflation of construction costs. And so what we can see is, while our capital budget is strong, it's nowhere enough to recapitalize the district, and it will continue to lose buying power as we progress and as inflation occurs normally and naturally. We also think it demonstrates fiscal responsibility because, again, we're utilizing our own resources in the most significant way possible. We also wanted to show that it's an early demonstration of what recapitalizing the district can look like. We've had lots of conversations in the past about bonds and building new schools. We have the opportunity to go do some of those things. And then maybe in the future there is a conversation of a larger bond or some other thing. But right now we can execute and actually accomplish some really meaningful projects without going to the voters for more money. We also want to move beyond deferred maintenance. We've all heard the $700 million deferred maintenance number in the district. What I can tell you is our capital and facilities team have been working really hard over the last 4 or 5 years to address that. Is it still a big number? Yes. Is it $700 million right now? No. But you got to remember, we had ESSER money that helped contribute to that. You guys were great and allocated fund balance money. That money's not going to be there forever. And so we want to be able to show the community, here's what we can do. Do you want more of that? Continue to partner with us. And then also, again, on that note, short-term outcomes can be realized. We can do some really, really amazing stuff in the next 3 years in terms of recapitalizing this district. Last week at the board presentation, it was last year, I guess, it was last school year. You saw that we are doing some really cool, meaningful work. And we can expand on that in a really significant way if we have some larger financial resources up front. Want to note, obviously, D11 has a history with this. Recently, we talked about the Adams renovation, Academy ACL, that large-scale renovation, and RCA. Those were both done through COPs that we managed here internally. Our project managers managed that for the schools. Obviously, they're paying down that debt, but this has happened in our district multiple times. There's also a variety of surrounding districts that have utilized this when they're not able to execute on a bond or some other larger capital initiative. All right. So tonight with Perkins Eastman, you're going to hear about kind of 3 things. Again, using this phase 1 or a COP as a catalyst to what might come in the future in terms of recapitalizing the district. We're going to consider the implications of what a T-shaped strategy is. So you saw that in the presentation. And so really a T-shaped strategy is about thinking about depth versus width. How many schools do we want to touch? How deep do we want to go with certain projects? And so we provided a variety of models for you, and none of those models have to be selected. We will likely, if moving forward, will end in some hybrid where we like this part of this, but we like this part of this. But we tried to provide opportunities where you saw we can go really, really deep in 1 or 2 schools, or we can do really cool work at 15 or 20 schools, or a combination of both. And then also Perkins Eastman will talk to you about the fact that what we're bringing you tonight is data informed. There's been lots of ongoing work on our capital program and feedback and all of those things. And so all of those things are coming here tonight to inform the project list that's coming in front of you. And I'm gonna turn it over to, oh, I'm sorry.
Is this the point in time you want to see if the board has any questions before we turn it over to them?
Happy to answer questions if you'd like to do that now.
Whatever works for you, if you want to
I think
wait
we
till.
should go through it, and because I think like even if you're sitting here now going like, I don't know if we wanna do a COP, like let's let them show you what the power of using the money that we have now to get that buying power up front. If you're on the fence, you might be like, oh, that makes sense. So I'm gonna do a little bit of car salesmanship here now. I'm gonna put you for a ride in the car. Welcome to Doug and Patrick. I'll take you for a ride.
We'll bring the new car smell.
New car salesman.
New car smell. Well, first off, it's very nice to be with you all and happy first day of school. It sounds like it was a great success and congratulations on all the work you guys have done. We have not really taken a break over this summer, but it's been a really exciting time for us. I think we've entered a really exciting part of the project where we're starting to really think about the future. A lot of the early work was, capturing data, summarizing the data. Now it's how do we actually put that data to work. But just to pull back, I'm Patrick Davis with Perkins Eastman.
Doug Abernathy with RTA.
So we're going to walk through, Brandon mentioned a few things. We're going to walk through the general process. We weren't the only ones working this summer. We had a great leadership retreat with the superintendent's cabinet in July. We'll give a few highlights from that. We'll talk about different types of investment we can be making in terms of sort of how deep do we want to go. And then as Dr. Comfort mentioned, we're going to talk about some concepts. These, as Dr. Comfort mentioned, are not set in stone. These are really a menu of options to get the conversation going. Like Dr. Comfort said, we're probably not going to land on any one of these things. We're likely, if we're going to move forward, going to land with some sort of mixture of these. But we want to get some ideas out on the table and get some feedback from you all tonight. And then we'll talk about some next steps. But to start, and just again to sort of reframe what we're doing in the academic support plan, in many ways, and it's the driving force for this is the work you guys have done over the last 3 to 5 years on the academic master plan. Our job is to understand the vision from that academic master plan and how does that translate to buildings through this academic support plan. So we've started to develop a set of principles. You'll recognize many of these. I think we shared some of these previously, but we're starting with the goals and the sort of the focus from the academic master plan, which is thinking about quality neighborhood schools, thinking about the pathway programs, really enhancing the college and career experience options, and then equitable access across the district. But we're also adding a few things. So how do we think about adding a spark to the district? So you guys have started that spark, lit a little bit of a flame, the conversations around the academic master plan. How can this continue that spark and really get a lot of energy around implementation and sort of making this a tangible effort? How do we think about creating safe and welcoming environments? We've done some surveys of parents, and obviously safety is top of mind for many families. So we couldn't go through this effort without thinking about the impact of creating welcoming and safe environments. Much about we're going to hear about fiscal things over the next few weeks, but we want to make sure you all and we are making recommendations that are fiscally responsible, and we're really grounded in the fact that we're going to make decisions that are best for your community, not just today, but in the long term as well. So that means making really smart, fiscally responsible decisions. And then promoting engagement. We can't do this in a box. We've been with you a bunch of times. We've done surveys. But how do we really do thoughtful engagement, collaboration with all stakeholders? And we'll touch upon that in a little bit here. As I mentioned, the focus of this is really started with the academic master plan, but I think we've talked about in the past. You all have done amazing work over the last few years. We've actually jumped into this project probably a little bit further down the line than we historically have. You guys have done the academic master plan, which is really setting the academic vision. You've also done a recent facilities assessment and facilities master plan, which gave us a lot of good foundational data on the condition of your buildings. So thinking about the condition of your roofs, HVAC systems, all of the nuts and bolts of a building. So we're able to have that as a really fresh start and allow us to hit the ground running. And then the other leg of the stool is the safety assessments that have been done in the district as well. So as I mentioned, safety is a high priority for all of us. We've got a lot of really good data in terms of where there's potential areas to focus on across the district. So all of that's going to feed into this academic support plan. We've been doing a lot of the work on the analysis over the last few months. And now we're sort of entering, as I mentioned, that critical phase of how do we actually put the data to work and actually make recommendations to improve your district. I'll turn to Doug here.
So just a recap of some of the items that were in the academics master plan. Key items in here, quality neighborhood schools, of course, is a topic across the board as part of that. We explored that a lot with the leadership group. That still needs to be defined, and we're working on that as a group because we need to flesh out how that aligns with the academic support plan. The other items that are further down on the list that we really need to focus on is how are we going to sort of redesign and update spaces to align with the pathway programs, the music, the STEM, the art, the other pathway programs that have been identified already in the academic master plan, and how are we going to really be able to visualize those things for our community so that adds to what Patrick and Brandon said about that spark, and it really demonstrates that alignment. And then the last part of that, Mike talked about this a little bit about how important high schools are and that alignment of career and technical education and how that aligns with what we're doing from a facility standpoint. We talked a little bit about this, and both Brandon and Patrick have talked about the longer timeline that we're really trying to facilitate here through the academic support plan is a long-term vision for the district. So when you look at this bar chart, you talk about the potential COP that we're talking about now this year, but really, to Brandon's point, it's going to be a long-term investment. So what we really want to do is provide the framework so the district can execute over time. And so we really want to meet these goals, and we don't look at it as a short-term thing that we're trying to solve right now. We really want to look at it as a long-term solution for the district so that we can see success for the district for the next 20 years.
One thing to just add though, on the COP, which is what we're focusing on tonight, this can be a real catalyst. This is, we heard about the playgrounds earlier, like people can actually see a tangible impact of the decisions you all are making. And that can be a really important thing as we think about that sort of cycle of reinvestment and reinvesting in new facilities to support the academic needs of students. Being able to see and actually put your eyes on and touch things really brings things to life. We're talking about the academic master plan all the time. We're talking about pathways. But walking into a school and say, okay, it's hitting me in the face. This is a visual and performing arts school. I can actually really sense that there's a really focused program at this school. So it's trying to find the right mix of projects that are going to get people excited about the actual implementation of the academic master plan and also reinvesting over time in a very strategic way. As we want to make sure we're not just throwing everything out there and say you need to do $1 billion worth of work tomorrow. We want to be thoughtful about how to actually phase this in a fiscally responsible way so that folks can see themselves on the path, but also see improvement as we're going.
Brandon talked about this a little bit, but we tried to put this in a graph just to illustrate the Adams Elementary School project as it initially was conceived and built, and then what has gone on. So if we looked at today, as Brandon said, it's somewhere in the $20 million range. So what happened during COVID is construction prices changed by about 30%. And that happened 2 years in a row, and it continued to go up. Traditionally in Colorado, we see something in the 3 to 6% range increase in construction costs on an annual basis. It's been flat a couple of times. In 08, 09, 010, it was flat, but it never really went down. And so as you project that out, as Patrick said, and Brandon said, it's the real cost of money. As we delay this, there's more deferred maintenance that we have to take care of, and the cost for those projects goes up more. So how do we impact students if we don't make that step now in the process?
So I mentioned we spent some good time with the leadership team this summer. So we were not the only ones working hard this summer. We brought Superintendent Gall's cabinet and leadership group together at Tesla for a really exciting day. It allowed us to sort of put our phones away, put our computers away for a little bit, and actually strategize and think about what are we trying to accomplish with this academic support plan, and then what do we want to do now versus the future. So we did a lot of exercises together. We started to think about who are we serving. So there's a lot of different stakeholders that we're thinking about. There's obviously the students, there's parents, there's teachers, there's community members who don't have kids at the school. There's a lot of folks that are impacted by the decisions we're talking about at this table. So we'll talk about what we did there. We can't talk about this work without talking about the academic programs. So when we're thinking about what a quality neighborhood school is, what does that mean for a parent? Like, what should they expect when they're walking to any single school in the district? What kind of programming should they expect to walk into? And then our job is what is the building requirements to support those needs? Whether you need a certain amount of world language classrooms or, science classrooms, we need to think sort of facility implications. So we need to start with what are the programmatic needs at every single school, whether they're a pathway school or just a quality neighborhood school. So thinking through the programs to support that. And then we wanted to think about what's the facility impact of those decisions. What do we need to do and how do we prioritize the needs across the district? As I mentioned, it'd be easy for me to say just snap our fingers and you can renovate and modernize all 50-something schools tomorrow. That's just not gonna happen, right? It's not physically possible, or for a variety of reasons. So we need to think about what's a strategic way and how do we think about actually implementing a program like this. To go through the first exercise, just to give you a sort of snapshot of what we did, we got into personas. So we acted a little bit and really tried to put ourselves in the roles and the positions of different stakeholders in the district. So there were some where we were saying we were students. What do students need when they're thinking about the buildings? How do they feel supported in their campus? What do they like about their schools? What don't they like? So really trying to put ourselves in the roles of students, even down to a middle school teacher, a special education teacher. We had a variety, and we're happy to share more photos. I would say we probably had 20 different personas that we thought through and had some group dialogue. We wanted to start with, who are we serving in this, right? You all do this every single day as part of your role on the board. You're serving constituents, and we wanted to make sure we're thinking about each individual group of stakeholders. So we did a lot of sort of grounding and level setting on who are we actually supporting. And as I mentioned, the people that we're supporting, what do they need to be successful? So again, thinking about the programmatic requirements needed to actually make their school experience a rich and exciting experience for them, so that they're getting the academic experience that they need and the academic master plan says they should be getting. So we thought a lot about different types of programs, what's needed from a facility standpoint, what's needed from, say, professional development standpoint. So we're talking about all these sort of new pathways and programs for teachers. Do we need to think about how we're supporting teachers differently in terms of professional development? Are there space impacts of that? Thinking about showcase spaces, as I mentioned, we have all these great ideas on pathway programs. If you walk into a school, does it scream, this is a VAPA school, or this is an exploratory learning school? How do we make sure that parents and community members know there are amazing things coming in, and how do the buildings actually support that from a design standpoint? So we spent a lot of time thinking about programs, and then the building implications. And then, there was a lot of takeaways. We did a lot of tactile exercises to, put sticky pads on all sorts of different ideas, but really some of the key takeaways were we want to make sure we're being strategic. As I mentioned, we want to be thoughtful about how we're implementing this. We need to be, thoughtful about the district's resources and spend them in a very appropriate way. We talked about how do we get something moving. The district has done a lot of amazing things. You guys have done a lot of great work. But if you walk into the buildings, a lot of families don't see that impact on the sort of the built environment. A lot of the deferred maintenance work is really impactful in stopping operational challenges. But you're still walking into a building that was built in the 1950s or 1960s, and a lot of them still have that feel. So how do you make strategic investments that people can actually see and actually get excited about, like the playground? That's a really good example that Superintendent Gall brought up. Maybe a small thing as we're thinking about the larger sort of needs across the district, but that's a huge thing for that community. They're now excited to go to the first day of school and talk about the playground. So how do we think about using an idea of like a COP to get that conversation started in the district and get people excited about investing in the facilities? And then, how do we actually dig deeper? So we'll talk about different concepts where we're talking about sort of, lighter touches across multiple schools versus really deep investments to show how transformational change can impact school communities. So you'll see some examples of that as we go. So a few things we're going to talk about. I'm just going to frame some of the concepts here and the data we're looking at. The first is using this idea of a COP as a catalyst. So we're talking about a certain amount of money that's not going to reach every single building across the campus. It's just physically not going to happen. So how do we use this to actually get interest or get excitement in the district to show what a capital investment in a school can do? For the playground, or maybe it's a pathway investment. What can we actually do to invest in our facilities so that we can actually start, putting the academic master plan to work and having some real direct outcomes from that, direct outputs from that work. Why now is one of the questions I think we're all having. We talk about the cost of waiting. There's a cost of waiting on the fiscal sense, but also from the student standpoint as well. Can we start moving and actually giving students the spaces really quickly that they need and actually can get them excited about, okay, I'm really excited to be in this STEM program because now I've got this amazing robotics space that I can actually take what I'm learning and put it to work. But if we start thinking about the implementation of these things, there's actually some projects we could actually probably get done this summer, upcoming summer. So, a year from now, if we start thinking about what are some of the, lighter touches that are going to make a big impact, like a playground or like a new entrance or like a pathway investment, some of these can actually happen this summer, and we can actually really catalyze the community and really build on the momentum that you guys have started with the academic master plan. But then, there may be some we want to do deeper touches, which are going to take longer. So it's sort of, phasing in and out projects so that we can actually start getting stuff done, showing some impact, and then sort of thinking through larger investments. Hopefully that's going to start getting the community and you all excited about what can be done in facilities. And then, we can potentially talk about a, reinvestment strategy or recapitalization of your program over an extended period of time. One of the things that came out of our conversations with the leadership group is this idea of a T-shaped strategy. And it sounds very sort of, hypothetical and almost scholarly, but the way to think about it is there's ways to invest in a district your size. You could do lots of projects on the sort of the wide way. You can hit a lot of projects and do, lighter touches across a lot of different schools as sort of the top of the T, or you can invest deeply, invest heavily in a smaller number of schools. We actually think this is a strategic way to actually show potential improvement by actually doing both. So, doing strategic investments in a very sort of narrow focus in a deep sense, but also making sure we're expanding our reach across multiple areas so that a lot of school communities can actually see, and a lot of schools students can actually see an impact. So we're not just saying we're going to do one thing here and that's it. We're thinking, can we do deeper investments? We'll talk about these in the concepts in a few places, but then also have a wide array of projects across the district. And we're using a lot of data to inform this. It's hard to see on this graphic, but we're taking a really multidimensional approach to really understanding the needs across the district. So the way to read these little rosette graphics is, if you want to make sure the colors should be as far as possible on the outside. If your school is doing really well, this entire circle would be filled with colors. But what we'll see is these different categories. The depth of the colors is going to show us where there's some areas of potential need or improvement. So we're looking at building utilization. What's the utilization of the campus? What's the enrollment of the campus? Are they reaching a critical enrollment threshold that allows them to offer the programs needed? What's the building condition? That we've done a lot. I mentioned the facility master plan last year gave us a lot of data on the conditions of buildings. What's the educational adequacy of the building? So, we're going to talk about a campus that the classrooms are probably just too small for modern instruction. So how do we think about the educational instruction, the educational adequacy of the campus? What's the safety and security score of the campus? And then what's the SPF, which I think of as a very pale person. I think of sunscreen all the time when I hear SPF, but what's the academic performance of the campus as well? So we're really trying to dig into lots of data to really doing this across all campuses to really understand how are these schools performing, how are they comparing against each other. So as we think about these strategies, how can we make data-informed decisions to identify where potential investments can be. So we're not going to drill into each of these categories today, but as we start going deeper and deeper into the scenarios over the next few months, we'll start sharing some more of the data and how they're informing different recommendations. So next, I think I'm going to, there we go.
So just quickly, the three strategies that we've talked about with you guys before are targeted, the broad portion of the T of targeted improvements, just like a playground, a modernized, which is more like Adams Elementary, so it's a little bit of a deeper dive into that T shape, right? And then the transformative is really looking at a building to replace a building or to do something, completely transformative to an existing building. So if you took a historic building in your district, pick any one of them, and you said, hey, we're going to do something transformative, that building may still look the same way on the exterior, but would be completely different as a 21st century learning environment on the inside. But those, as we've talked before, become high cost, high quality, and longer duration sort of projects. And we're not looking as much at that, but there are some scenarios that we're gonna show you where we're gonna actually talk about transformative as one of the options that we're gonna explore.
So before I go into the concept, I want to reiterate, we're going to share 5 different ideas tonight. These are just a menu of options to get the conversation started. As Dr. Copper mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, it's unlikely we're going to land on one of these as the exact scenario. We're not going to get it right just throwing it out there for the first time. What we want to hear tonight, and we're going to have some conversation around, what do we like about each one of these? What are we concerned about for each one of these? And we're probably going to end up in a series of sort of what we call hybrid options, where we're stealing some things from this one, stealing something from that one. But what we're trying to do is get the conversation about different concepts. You're going to see there's very distinct differences between each of the concepts. But again, don't get your sort of mind around, we need to vote on 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5. We're trying to get, for tonight, get a sense for what do we like about 1, what don't we like about 1, what do we like about 3. So you're going to see varying levels of.
So as you get started, a little bit of coaching for everyone that's gonna look at these. So I think the best thing to do is to sort of look at them broadly as we go through them. If you have specific questions about it, don't worry about, hey, what if we change this, or what about this school? Don't get that deep, stay at a high level, because when we get to the end, we're gonna summarize all 5. We're gonna summarize all 5, and when we summarize all 5, that's the opportunity to sort of compare and contrast. And then dig deeper if you've got specific questions for Patrick and I. We can answer specific questions about those, but let's not get too far in the details as Patrick runs through the first 5 sort of quickly and gives you a summary of where we're going.
And the other thing I want to add as they go through these is there are varying degrees of interest by external parties in trying to find new ways to get to some of these solutions. So traditionally, COPs or any construction in school districts are done monolithically. We feel that they're done with the community because we ask our constituents, but we as a school district generate a revenue stream to solve a facilities problem. Some of these have what I would call public-private partnership opportunities and/or interest from the city as we think about swapping spaces that could then be co-developed into affordable housing solutions for the city, that we're looking at some of these as a citywide solution, of which we would certainly carry the bulk of the revenue stream for that. But there are ways that we could, the term that I would use is a cap stack, that in some of these scenarios, we could take $1 and get $1.30 or $1.40 out of it, because there are other interested parties that are in it. And so as we think about that, particularly as we think of establishing District 11 as the lead district in Colorado Springs, if you're open to that, you can start thinking expansively of like, oh, I see how that may or may not happen. It does complicate when anytime you put another P in a 3P party, 3 public-private partnerships, you can then start to complicate things. Traditionally, systems like to collapse and say, I can control what I can control. But in an effort, really when we think about us as being a downtown and/or that first ring off of downtown, how do we do things like the YMCA and the, and is it Centura or University Health up in Monument, right? That's a co-located facility from 2 completely separate organizations. Everybody won in that, and everybody saved money, right? And certainly the people who live in Monument definitely won.
So just a couple other, because I jumped ahead a little bit because we're excited to show the options, but what we're really looking for here is to get some reaction from you guys and some input, because when we come back in a couple of weeks, it's gonna be based on your input. And so we're gonna look at actually 5 different concepts Patrick's gonna present, but we want some feedback for you guys so that we can narrow them and refine them as we come back to you guys in a couple of weeks. All right, Patrick, do it.
So I'm gonna jump into the first one. Again, these are conceptual ideas to get some conversation going. But the first one is a high school focused initiative where we would do the deep investment. We're saying between the $50 to $80 million range in one high school, and then have a broad, that's sort of the top of the T, impact across the rest of the district, where we would spend roughly between $10 and $15 million per quadrant to do targeted investments. So this one, we've identified Palmer as sort of the first test case to talk about for a variety of reasons. One is actually building off what Superintendent Gall had mentioned. It's actually in a very strategic location where there's a lot of things happening in the city, and potential partnerships with the YMCA and other, citywide programs. It's also very high, the visibility is very high of where it is in terms of if you're thinking about sort of generating interest and catalyzing the community. It's in a very strategic location. And then from facility standpoint, as we're thinking about, again, just to frame everyone, $50 million is not going to renovate all of Palmer. $80 million is not going to renovate all of Palmer. It's a big building, historic building. But Palmer, the way it's constructed is there's multiple buildings, which allows us to actually be, maybe we focus on building 1 and 2 and not do building 3. So the structure and the way Palmer is organized allows us to be a little more strategic and surgical in terms of how we make interventions. We could say, maybe we need to replace the gym building and move that gym somewhere else, and so kids aren't walking down the hill to go to gym and PE and thinking about things like that, because the way the campus is structured, we can focus on certain buildings and maybe not do the whole campus in probably an easier way than a traditional school. The other thing, as we've walked Palmer, anyone who's been in there, probably been in through the underground spaces and the tunnels and the underground classrooms, there's a lot of classrooms that I would say don't meet our 21st century standard of what we call an educational environment. There's a lot of below grade classrooms, and there's a lot of classes without windows, and really, I would say, less than optimal learning environment. So Palmer sort of jumped out for a variety of reasons as the first sort of test case for us to explore in terms of a deep investment in a high school. And as I mentioned, the sort of the top of the T, the broad investment would be spending roughly between $10 and $15 million per quadrant to do some targeted projects. So maybe that is, figuring out some pathway programs to invest in, and really, we build some outdoor classrooms to, enhance the explorational learning, or we build a new, visual performing arts spaces in the Napa school. Whatever it is, we focus on really targeted, I'd say $3 to $8 million, even less sometimes, projects that have a huge impact, like the playground. It seems like a small, when we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, a playground seems like a small thing. But that playground to that community is a really impactful investment. It can show a lot of things. So we haven't identified what those projects are, but I think part of the conversation would be, do we like the idea of, distributing the money across the district, so again, we can show broader reach, and so every community has a chance to see the impact of the facility decisions. The one thing we're going to highlight on these slides is, by doing this, we're talking about investing capital, but investing capital actually allows the district to avoid capital and deferred maintenance costs. So if we're replacing systems, Palmer, for example, I think at one point had a really high price tag for HVAC. That's stuff that can get incorporated into this project. So it is now just not a standalone HVAC project. Those deferred maintenance costs actually get lumped into some of these sort of larger capital projects. So, a rough estimate, we think we can actually defer 30 or so $million of capital of deferred maintenance in the Palmer facility. The limitations with this one, as we'll sort of go through all of them, the high schools, they're bigger, they cost more money, which means you don't have the ability to stretch your dollar across the district as far. So, investing in Palmer is really the only big investment you could do in this sort of 1A scenario. As you'll see through the middle school and elementary school options, you might be able to stretch your dollar a little further. That's probably the one, I would say, con of this.
It's really important to just double down on what I would just call cost avoidance in the deferred maintenance piece. I remember the board asking very specifically as we were building this year's budget, how are we going, matter of fact, I think it was Director Bankus, how are we going to tackle $700 million of deferred maintenance? We will never solve $700 million of deferred maintenance by just trying to use a deferred maintenance strategy. We will always be underneath that. Now, it's impossible to prove if there's really $32 million worth of deferred maintenance of cost in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years, in this example, a centralized high school. But we do know that every year that we get away with it, we're getting away with it, and it's by the skin of our teeth, right? We had the wettest year on record. Thank God we didn't have a massive snowstorm in May that with all the wetness in some of those roofs that haven't been replaced, we didn't have a roof collapse. A roof collapsed in Houston this year under a lot of the wet. But so it's not as much as it does cost. Sometimes it's how much it helps us not cost in the future. So to be investing in our schools, and I think there's a parallel that I really like that we named it the academic support plan for our facilities plan. Because the secret to our success over this last year has been the investment of the board into instruction. we invested in instruction and we're seeing the payback after decades of retreating from the cost of instruction. And we're at this balance point now on facilities of do we want to get burned by continuing to defer maintenance without a way out of it? Asking the community for money for Band-Aids and paper clips and yarn is not going to excite the community. We're not even asking the community for this money. We have the opportunity to use our money that says we can start to show that it's not about fiscal conservatism, it's about fiscal responsibility. And if we show that we're the board and the district that believes that we can use dollar cost averaging or whatever we want to call it, that says we know how to use our money well, then we're the good stewards of the public dollar to then go to, you know, the Colorado Springs School District 2050 vision, right? It's just around the corner. Somebody, you know, when they say 20 years ago, we all think of the 80s. 20 years ago was the 2000s.
I'm going to keep us moving because we've got a lot to get through. I want to make sure we have a conversation. As we go, 1B is very much the same thing. It's just a heavier investment. And this is really just to show you any of these can be tweaked and modified. If we want to invest more deeply, you know, deeper into a school, we can do that. This would be an $80 million investment. Again, these are just concepts we're trying to get across. The next one is a middle school focused initiative. Similar thing on the top line where we would invest on the top of the T, $10 million per quadrant in targeted pathway or quality neighborhood school investments across all 4 quadrants. But then invest deeply into 2 middle schools. So whether that's Holmes, North, or Swigert, your middle schools have a significant facility, and if you look at the facility data, the group of middle schools is actually in the worst condition. And we're looking at the conditions of middle schools, elementary schools, high schools. The middle schools have, just from a pure facility standpoint, have the worst scores across the group. So this is an effort to actually, potentially change that, and I really focus on investing in some middle schools. It's also the sort of the next pivotal point, and as you're growing the academic master plan, there's a lot of work done on the elementary pathways this year that work, the focus is on the middle schools. This could be a nice natural sort of segue to sort of continue that conversation from academic master plan to actual academic support plan implementation. So concept 2 is investing deeply into 2 middle schools, and we can obviously talk more about where those investments happen to be. But based on the data we've looked at, these are the 3 that have sort of popped up, but we're certainly open to more conversation. The next one, you can probably guess where it's going, which is more of an elementary focus. Elementary schools are smaller, which means we can do more deep investment in 4. So again, high school is 1, middle schools are 2 buildings. We think 4 elementary schools across the district could be invested deeply in, or typically in sort of the Adams range of investment. And then the same thing on the top bar, spreading the rest of the money across the district to do targeted investments. The one thing I also want to just add to piggyback on what Superintendent Gall was saying about the deferred maintenance, going back to the Palmer example, investing in deferred maintenance is not going to get kids out of the basement of a building. That like deferred maintenance is fixing HVACs, it's fixing roofs, it's fixing operational things. It is not going to be a sort of game changer in terms of academic design and really supporting kids with 21st century learning. So I think we think about deferred maintenance, it's getting the roof done. As we're thinking about the academic support plan and really tying it back to the academic master plan, these larger investments are the way we can actually start thinking about reimagining what space looks like and how we're supporting kids from a educational design. So I just want to sort of get that point out there too. So it's just not only just cost avoidance, if you're not doing it, you're avoiding sort of impacting the educational experience of kids in the buildings. Concept 4 is a little bit different. So you see we're only showing the top of the T here, which is sort of broad investment. One of the things that this district is doing that is, I think, fantastic and more districts need to be doing, which is, I see Travis over there is leading this effort, which is the ESCO work. So understanding how energy efficient projects can actually, impact and improve the experience of the operations of a school, but also have downstream impacts and savings. So in this one, we're saying, what if we invest roughly $25 million in doing energy improvement projects across the district that will actually have downstream impacts and cost savings associated with them. So those are more projects like, controlling for water and reducing water consumption, reducing energy consumption, through the Schneider work and the ESCO work, they've already started to develop a list of projects district-wide and targeted across the district that this money could go and support to, again, really try to, bring down some operational costs in the future. And then allow us to, with the remainder of the money, do really, I would say, a little more focused, targeted investments across the rest of the district. So focusing on pathways or focusing on pre-K expansion, really sort of targeted focused projects across the district. And then the last scenario, concept 5, is the sort of the opposite of that, which is really just doing deep investments. So the first 3 were the T-shaped. The fourth one was just doing sort of widespread, top of the T investments. This one is, what if we just do deep investments with, we're saying $120 million potential COP. That means one sort of deep, full investment in one high school, or you could do, one deep investment in a middle school plus, an Adams-like investment in a middle school, or you could do 2, new elementary schools with that. You wouldn't be able to do the broad touch across the rest of the schools, but you would be able to show what a transformational change can look like in each of the schools. So this one, to be clear, you'd be picking one of these 3. You can't do all of these. You'd be doing 1 high school, 2 middle schools, or 2 elementary schools. So I went through those quickly. I think we've got just 2 more slides, and then we want to open up for a lot of conversation. But again, just to bring us back to what Doug shared on the slide, what we're hoping to do is use this as to sort of create this idea of this cycle of reinvestment. So investing through the COP to get some movement, excitement in the community, make impactful decisions for kids. Hopefully get support for the community, and then if we need to come back, we're showing the district can actually implement projects effectively, improve the learning experience for kids and staff and buildings, improve the experience for communities, and then that can hopefully catalyze this sort of what we're calling the system or reinvestment into the district over an extended period of time. So all school communities can eventually see themselves, on this sort of path of improvement. Not going to happen at once, but if we can show the path forward and get people to understand the rationale, how schools are prioritized and picked, they'll see themselves in the process.
I appreciate every time you use the word catalyst, and so we're bringing this, and I don't want it to feel hurried. I don't know, have you shared the slide of the number of touch points that we have? I might have stepped out to eat. I'm starving, by the way, still burning so many calories today. We just know that the community was really struggled with the last bond. I don't think anybody denied that there's a need. Nobody can go into any of our buildings other than the newer ones and say, oh, we're just fine. We're not just fine. We still have unair conditioned space in 2023. Thanks to the team along the wall, we're bringing an ESCO in to spend less energy. And the first feedback from Snyder was, well, there's only so much to save because you actually don't spend that much in energy because you still don't condition your buildings. Right? And so when we think about ties to both achievement and enrollment, I don't know, if I had a vehicle and I can drive to a new building in D49 or D20 that's air conditioned, that might be the thing that makes the difference. And I can certainly tell you in the buildings that I was in today that were hot, even some of them that are air conditioned, but they're not modern air conditioning, it does affect the learning environment. And so we can put our head in the sand and pretend, hey, the numbers are better, hey, we're doing great. We're still talking about an X number of schools on a state watch list, right? We're gonna celebrate that as incredible progress in a short period of time. What we're not talking about is number of kids competing for Rhodes scholarships, right? We're still a district that's in the hundreds of rankings out of 178 in the state. So to believe in a future, this is a catalyst, just says, without having to get caught up in politics. This is a non-political conversation. We don't have to ask, what do we think the electorate thinks? This is us using the money that we have in a smart way to test and put our toe in the water to see. However Adams got done, I don't know who the board member was, I don't know what the makeup of the board was, but every time I go to Adams, I go, boy, what a great little school. And by the way, one of the schools that we'll be celebrating has been the tremendous academic progress at which I can't say because that would be breaking into bark. But I didn't put it in the same sentence. There was a period in between.
Okay, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, so we just want to open for conversation. So we've got some, we'll go in any direction you would like in terms of conversation. We've
Okay,
got
so
some questions, but
Go ahead.
Is that the last slide? You're done? Okay.
Yes.
we've got one timeline slide, but it's,
So, okay, go
Is
ahead.
it possible, Ms. Odom has some talking points about the financing that I think might come up as questions, so if she might be able to go through those, then we can get into all of the Q&A.
Okay, is that this slide or
no.
Okay.
It's just-
you've got something else?
Yes,
Okay.
not a slide, just a couple talking points,
Okay.
just a minute or two. So tomorrow we're gonna issue, regardless of what the board's position is or their decision or how they decide to move forward, we're gonna get ready and we're gonna issue a solicitation for underwriting services for a COP. We don't have to have funding to do that, they're paid out of the process. So we'll get that issued and then we'll have something on contract by the end of August. So the next time we're gonna meet on September 6th after tonight, where we really want to get a good feedback from the board on where you'd like to focus, what projects you'd like, how deep or how broad, or a nice combination of both. We'll be ready to respond and move forward with structuring the financial commitment and the financial piece. We'll come back on the 20th, so we'll have our underwriter come and our tax bond counsel come, and we'll be able to sit with you to structure how you want this if you decide to move forward. There's a lot of nuances, so we want to make sure we get what you want before we go to non-action. As Dr. Comfort mentioned, we'll be able to refinance or refund is the proper term, any point down the road. So if right now it feels like, interest rates might be a little high, we could still refund it down the road and go to a lower rate. We've done that over the years with our general obligation bonds. It doesn't do diddly for the district, but it saves millions for the taxpayers. So we have been very fiscally responsive over the years, and for this level of commitment, we would be looking at bonds, but it'd be through a certificate of participation, still not requiring voter approval. 25-year term is what we're looking at, and the payment, we don't know the exact amount, we have some preliminary information. Structuring again allows us to, if you were to approve this in October, maybe we could start charging back efforts that we do, but the money wouldn't come in until January, which we could have Perkins Eastman and RTA do some more defining of each of the projects that you would decide. So the program team, the capital program team would be able to swiftly pivot into RFPs and get things going right away. So we could realize some projects by the end of next school year if they're small, or bigger but through the end of the summer, this time next year. So that's really all I wanted to say, is that we're gonna be prepared to be nimble and flexible to whatever you decide, and then we'll go from there. Any questions?
Thanks for that summary. And so we've heard a lot first about the COPs and then the various options, and then Ms. Odom also summarized where she is will be ready by the end of the month as far as issuing the solicitation for COPs and being ready in that area. What's the COP total scope that we are talking about? I think you mentioned that, like the amount of money that we are
These
talking
projects are based on 120 million,
about. So, okay.
Which is putting how much of the capital up front?
which is that depends on financing, but that's roughly 9 million.
So about half of the MLO capital up front to leverage $120 million worth of buying power.
And actually, at the end of this, it's gonna be more like 140 to 145 million when we take into account interest that we would gain on that amount of money. We would get about 10% of that, so all in project, we would probably be at 140, we would need to reserve some of that for contingency, maybe some other services, but in terms of the basic scope, 9 million, 120 million, But again, we could structure that however the board wanted, if they wanted to raise or lower that.
Okay.
And so we settled on that number. There are other options if the board wanted to be more aggressive. But our recommendation in some internal meetings was no more than half of the MLO capital. Because we like the MLO capital. It allows us dexterity and flexibility to meet immediate unforeseen needs. And it is still significantly higher amounts of capital access for us than neighboring districts. But the neighboring districts have been able to leverage larger buying power, of which we're still in post-traumatic stress of the failed bond. And so this is really a way to restart that conversation. Instead of thinking we have to go through that whole experience again, can we demonstrate that we believe we can start this recapitalization that shows the community that we can be trusted? I wasn't here, but my read was that's a failed bond because we were a district that wasn't seen as being trustworthy of the public's money. So here's a way to say, we're so good at it, we're gonna borrow against our own money. We can expand on those talking points to really go on a campaign that shows even though you don't need voter approval, it is an election year, and we certainly want people to see that we're being smart with the money that we have and convey to people that absolutely now's the time to do that. And we're not raising your taxes in a year where inflation's been high. Even though we've given strong compensation, we know that there are fiscal challenges that come forward in any public institution. Making those dollars work best for the district in this capacity.
You had something?
And I just wanted to share in closing that we have used this mechanism over the years to meet needs. We renovated Adams, I believe we built Martinez under a COP, and Academy ACL and Roosevelt Charter Academy are the most recent where the boards have approved them benefiting from an Adams-like renovation.
Except we are now going for a larger amount of money than what we did at Adams and Martinez. So what's the threshold? What is it that we can safely go without leveraging some of our immediate? We are using half of the MLO money, so we do have half of the MLO money still left over if we have some unprecedented needs, unexpected needs that come up.
And we're in the first time in a long time in a position where we're actually building plans for those MLO dollars. And so it's no longer the risk of the unknown. We're making programs by school for 5-year capital budget plans that in this process we'll be able to say where we think we're overstepping risk or underbuying some of that leverage that we have. It's not the fear, because again, the way I could see this playing out is like, well, what if you're right? What if we get that massive snowstorm next May and Man Middle School ceiling falls in? Like, that's not the game we're playing now. We have a plan for new roofs. We have a plan for safer kissing rides. We have a plan for playgrounds. We have that within our capital budget. Now we're saying, can we use part of that capital budget to go into the spaces that we haven't thought? A transformational or even just a deep investment in schools that we know need improvement will send a very clear message and we'll see return on investment. I just remind people that every student is $10,000. I never see the kid as a dollar because I see the value of what a kid represents for our community going forward. But like when we make a $100,000 investment on an assistant principal, that just means I need 10 more kids. 10 more, I know I get 10 more kids when I now have 2 instructional leaders in a building. And so I know we're not gonna find 1,000 kids that makes you be able to do that. But if you were to take a school like Palmer High School, which has been losing kids steadily year after year after year, and we convince ourselves that we're doing right by kids by having walkie-talkies at the top of the hill and walkie-talkies at the bottom of the hill and say, I got 3 going on at Herbst Field. I only got 2. Oh, 1 stop for a slushie, got 3. We think that's a good plan. That's not a good plan. And that's why people don't go to Palmer High
Can I
School.
add one quick note on the MLO, just super quick? The building condition is a significant input in how we're thinking about the building. So the buildings in the worst condition, that's typically where you're gonna spend your MLO money first. So if you're investing a larger investment in those projects, that is, money you're not using the MLO on. So if we're thinking about sort of how to divide the MLO, the building condition is a big input, and actually you're avoiding using MLO money through a COP on some of these buildings.
So we're already late and in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time
yeah.
that we have. So I need to open it up for board feedback and questions. So let's open it up for board feedback. Who wants to go first? Jason.
So I appreciate these initial ideas. My thoughts are based on what Mr. Gall's and we've been seeing with elementary schools all growing, already putting some money into those. I'm wondering if, to your prior point about, that modern school or that updated school could be the thing that's gonna bring those parents that have the ability for choice to come back to D11. I kind of drew up my own little T here. I don't know how to share it to you. But if the broad piece, 120 million is what we can work with, right?
That's what we get for this scenario.
So my thoughts were like your depth could still be like Palmer with the 80 million significant investment and community partnership, because I think, like we've already said, that's a great piece to try to reinvest and revitalize. And then if you took 40 million and focused it more towards, elementary schools are gonna be mad, towards other high schools and middle schools, or at least took 30 million of that 40 and said, hey, middle school, high school focus to get those kids back, and to give them, a great new place to learn and be safe at, and then maybe, 10 million for elementary school. So 30 for middle school, high school, 10 million for elementary. We've covered the gambit of all schools. We've revitalized our oldest one that's the most geographically disjointed, and then maybe we've got, the play into the middle school and high schools to get those kids coming back. So that was kind of how I drew it here. It's not up there, but I just thought with where our numbers are looking, I like the idea of, OPM, other people's money, to that degree, and putting our skin in the game. And then I think the phase 2, that would be the catalyst for phase 2 to go, hey, 2 or 3 years on the road, look, we're working on our district, we're revitalizing. Let's go for a bond and step this up a notch. So I think that's a neat idea.
So no questions from you, but you provided feedback.
I provided concept 6 tonight.
We got to hybrids already.
That's fine.
That's great.
The focus, and what I heard from him is the focus being more on the secondary schools.
Yeah.
And lesser because the enrollment is strong at elementary schools at this time.
I just want to add to the elementary school, as I was out in open houses and in first days, and we're really rethinking about the word choice in the district. The gift of our district is the small elementary school. Now, from my operational mind, the curse of our district is a small elementary school. But our families line up and come to our elementary schools because most of them feel like a family. I got a hallway with pre-K, kinder, first and second. I got a hallway with third, fourth, and fifth. Now, we're not maximized in utilization yet, but we're growing. I have families I met yesterday at Steele that are coming from all over the city because of the word of mouth of that Steele is a primary years IB program. And when you walk in there, you just want to hug kids. It just feels great. So yeah, could it use money? Absolutely. Do we want to make it a 600 kid building? Never. Because Old North End doesn't want a 600 kid elementary school. Old North End and Patty Jewett like Taylor. They like Columbia. They like Steele. They love that feel. And so we can put money into it. But I remember there were previous ideas that were about we're going to build a massive Queen Palmer Grant, was it? Or Henry? Taylor. Right? All you did was make Queen Palmer community and the Taylor community map. Give a little bit of money to those small schools. Small schools work really well for what we are. We are a diversified school system that wants to meet people with choice. We're never going to be the suburban counterparts that we have. We're never going to be the 600 kid elementary schools that you can just churn out when you put a 2,500 unit up in D49. Boom, of course you put a 600 kid elementary school in the middle of that.
Any other comments from board
To
members?
piggyback on that real quick, being at 10 different open houses in the past 2 days and seeing a lot of you there, the way our school spent $5,000 was great. It was amazing. So to say 10 million for all elementary or 30 million for our 5 to 6 middle schools, I can't even fathom the upgrades and things that they would be able to do with that money, just seeing how well they utilized $5,000. So it's exciting.
Dr. Long?
Well, I am of the transformational nature. I like transformation. Although like all of them are good, but to me, the high schools are gonna affect more families than say, an elementary, because they're all feeding that high school. So if you're gonna get more bang for your buck as far as affecting families, a transformational high school will affect an entire region, where a transformational elementary school will affect a smaller community. And I'm not trying to say they're minimized, but if we're gonna, then we can consider those other middle schools, whatever, when we go for a bond, because once you do a transformational high school, imagine if we built a new Palmer High School. I mean, state of the art, you get UCCS with the high tech, and you bring it into downtown, and Palmer becomes a spacecraft. I mean, you know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, when we say, hey, we wanna go for a bond, even me against the bond would vote for the bond. Because now we're talking, now we're transforming.
We're doing.
Everything else,
Yeah.
it's good, but it's not gonna get the impact of something, if you're gonna come in, you gotta come in large, or don't come at all. So my idea is $120 million brand new Palmer, get rid of all that craziness downtown, make all those little 7-Elevens go broke because the students can't walk up and down the street no more, and build a school where kids come in and get educated. Because all they're doing is, I've been there, they're walking up down the street, getting loaded, smoking dope on their way to the next class. And you see them all smoking dope. Are you kidding me? This is high school, right? And then the ones that don't go to school, because we're always losing kids, are out there behind the bush doing things they shouldn't be doing, and they're not telling their mom they're doing. So something transformational to me will last decades as far as other bonds, other needs. It'll just pay dividends, and all those other elementary schools, middle schools, they will be taken care of. So that, I like the idea of being transformational, not, let's go big.
I see Director Art's hand up. Director Art.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. First, I'd really like to see more information about the COP, a payback schedule proposed,
and the possible, I understand the pros of using half of our capital budget on this, but I'd also like to see what we might be giving up for that. I don't think it's just as easy to wave away that we have half of these funds suddenly available to us. What is our cost there? So just, I'd like more finances. That's to make sure I am better understanding that. I feel like we've got all these great ideas. Sure, we can talk about transformational, but again, what about the nitty gritty here of amounts? That includes the Palmer proposal in particular. What I would be really curious about the costs there, when I know that a roof will cost us $1 million, and I don't know, it just seems like $120 million for a new high school. Given the complexities of this property, it might be more than that. And can we talk a little bit more about public input? It just seems like that was glossed over. When we talked about the academic master plan and the facilities master plan, we had incredible feedback from our community. And it sounds like a bunch of our staff sat in a room and pretended they were other people. And I'm being a little facetious with my words. I appreciate that you sat down and considered the point of view of from 20 different, I think you said, aspects. But we're not representing the parents at Swigert. We can think about what we think we know, but I'm reminded of that expression again, nothing for us without us. What do people want? And we don't have that. And here's an opportunity to engage our public again and ask them. Thank you.
Okay. We'll defer first to Dr. Comfort. Do you want to answer? The questions was first about the payback schedule. What are we losing as far as cost goes by using half of the capital projects money for, and then the public input part, I'm assuming that we are going to get public input over the next couple of months. It's just a preliminary stage at this point in time.
Yeah, I'll go to the second one first. I think the one slide that we didn't get to was kind of the community input slide, but they can definitely speak to that here in just a sec. In terms of the financial data, again, we will have a work session that is completely dedicated to that, but I'm happy to get as much upfront information as needed. I heard a specific question there about obviously what taking $9 million up from the capital budget, what that would impact. Again, we have to take into consideration the savings of deferred maintenance and what would come back to their budget, but we can definitely get an analysis on that. And we can look at the cost of, I believe Director Ott said, is can we really rebuild Palmer High School with $120 million? So we can do some deeper work into that and have that for the next work session. Within the financing would be the following work session.
Okay, and then
Yeah, on the engagement, so.
public input.
Yeah, so we're gonna start having a lot more, we've done the first round of surveys a while back, we're doing another round of surveys soon, so just sort of a virtual touch, we got really good feedback from the community in the last one. We're also gonna be out doing some town halls in the coming, as part of the larger academic support plan process in September, so we'll have a lot of other opportunities in the public as well, so more to come on that, but.
So one of the goals for community input is to put something in front of the community to get their input.
Right.
We have a lot of input, and I appreciate Director Ott reminding us of all the input we have from the facilities master plan that was developed, that has been referenced, and although quick cycled, the town hall and feedback sessions we held in the spring. The problem was we didn't really have much to ask for direct feedback on it. Do you want a pathway school to feel more like a pathway school? Yes. What we haven't put on the table is let's just say 3 of the 5 ideas here and get community input. Or one idea and it's a rotating school if we did transformational, right? Obviously, holding no cards. My vision is a transformational downtown high school. It is 100+ years old. The other high schools certainly need improvement, but they are anywhere in the bad shape that is Palmer. We've given a lot of anecdotal things, but to Director Ott's point, getting feedback on an idea, I think would be beneficial, because you don't want to do this without community input, but you don't need you need the community support, you just don't need the vote, right? That's that, and so we can get that input to get the support, but I think we have to put something out there, not, do you like the idea of a COP? Right? We don't want to have to go through explaining whether it's a debit card or a credit card. We want to say, in order to do this for the future of the district, do you like this idea or not?
Yeah, if we can get a little bit more details on the project, the guidance from the board at this point is, first, if we want to go in this direction as a COP, and then concept 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If we can come to that, one of those.
So I think that's one of the things that we wanna, that's one of the points that we really want feedback from tonight, is really, we don't wanna get in specific weeds about whether we're replacing this mechanical unit or that room.
Yes.
We want a high level perspective, and then as we get further into the fall process, we'll provide more details for that. But again, that occurs through a design process, and we don't have all the answers, because all we've written is sort of the first outline of a book. We don't even have the chapters yet. And so we aren't gonna be able to give you chapter and verse until we get much further through the design process. So think of this as, we have a loose concept of a book right now. We don't even have a table of contents right now. So we've got to sort of agree on what is our subject matter first, and then we'll get further into the details so that we can give you those chapters so that we can feel like
when we do have those details, the feedback that I'm hearing from Director Ott, and I think most of the other board members would echo the same thing, is that we do get the community involved in it. Maybe having town hall meetings.
Yeah, we want their feedback this fall on 3 different books that we could potentially write. That's really what we want this fall is, hey, here's 3 different concepts for 3 different books. Which one sparks your interest? Which one would you like to see?
So I was gonna say, the timeline on the left, we're starting with 5 today, we're gonna start working our way down, getting a little more focused, and as we go each time we meet, we're gonna get more focused, we may be down to 3 next time, we're gonna work our way, get more granular down as we continue to progress with this conversation.
Dr. Daniels.
Thank you for all of the hard work and working on the processes. To Superintendent's point, do you know how much time we put into that to even get where we are. Executive team, the meetings, the money that we put in to even have these conversations just for a monkey wrench to be thrown into the choice again. And we're now delayed again. What I'm asking for is make sure that when they come after us, you have the language to say, we have been looking at the books, we've got 3 different titles, we're working. Make sure you tell them, because somehow, some way, there's this thing that happens in the community. Even when you think you're moving forward, something comes in and just like knocks you out of the water. And I don't want to pretend like it doesn't happen, because the surveys and all of the stuff that was done, and we're still delayed. And yes, we knew years ago deferred maintenance was not gonna be nowhere near being taken care of. And that's the reality. So I would love it if we could, yes, figure out how to have the community understand that we have given you space to throw monkey wrenches in, but we don't have time anymore because things are about to happen. If the weather is soaking up the roofs, we can only do a Mitchell and a Doherty with the HVAC and no air conditioning. I mean, we've been dealing with this way before you got here.
Yep.
So I'm just saying, however you gotta get it, make sure the community hears you, like this might be your final hour. Curtain call.
Okay, let's come back with an algorithm. We've got both the security data, we have the other long acronym for the conditions of the buildings. Let's work on an algorithm that presents, because again, I don't wanna hijack and say Palmer, because I want Palmer. Let's do a little bit of data to be able to provide the next time to show exactly to Director Daniel's point. We've been doing this for a long time. And many of those algorithms and charts come from the original FMP conversation, which came from the original bond. That data is still there. Most of those schools didn't magically just improve overnight. So I think if we show a little bit of an algorithm, you show that 3-part step, Patrick, and you had the one with the radar scope on it. Let's do a couple of examples if the board wants us to go in that direction.
And I just wanna say, we did put that out there. We did say, we did. And I remember saying, if we keep doing this, we're gonna be in a tight position. And we are there again. I don't know what it is. I just need the team to really get, somebody's gonna flip the script and something else gonna come in and we just don't have that kind of luxury. I don't know.
So,
Can we just communicate to them?
What I'm hearing is you just want feedback from the community.
Well, we have always gotten feedback from the community. It's the feedback that somehow still isn't received well. If there's a disgruntled whatever, they're coming in with a monkey wrench, and before we know it, the disgruntledness takes over the whole project, and we don't get much done from there. I just need us to just be honest and really real that if it's not one thing, they're gonna find another. Can we flip all the rocks to just make sure we figure out what those things are so that we are clear that they understand we can only do this for so long?
So you understood?
Yeah, no, I understand. And I think just to answer super quickly, I think part of this is we need to make sure people see themselves in a broader plan.
Okay. However you need to get them to see it.
Okay, Director Nelson.
So I have been thinking of it all more in like categories, so maybe your table of contents. Initially, my instincts are safety and security, and then I want to remind the community on the board that we invested over $11 million out of the fund balance towards that. So yay, I feel in a good place, and I'm sure you guys will follow up as to if we need to put more funding towards that. And then, with it being a 90-degree day, my thoughts go towards AC. And then when we look at our pathway schools and things, CTE definitely comes to my mind as a possible scenario. So I guess I'm not thinking so much in terms of elementary versus high school, but a little bit more of categories. And
So you didn't mention middle schools. You said elementary and
elementary
high school.
to high school.
Oh, okay.
Middle school can be in there too. Yeah.
Okay.
And whether that's I think about the Wasson campus and it closed and then we brought it back, previous boards brought it back and we've kind of revitalized it. And so, is it that becomes our CTE hub, or I don't know, like what is that? Is it CTE at all the locations, or is it a private partnership to strengthen our CTE programs? And we're investing and the private organizations are investing, and so
Did any of the 5 resonate at all with you? Or let's ask it the other way. Did any of them turn you off and you said, I don't really want to see that book?
I think I'm leaning more towards kind of what the other board directors shared of transformational and not spreading thin the funding, but let's make a big, bold impact that's gonna impact a lot of students in a big way and not just little Band-Aids.
Okay, great, thank you.
Bankers, you haven't said anything. Do you have any feedback or input? Okay, Director Art, I see your hand up again.
Yes, thank you.
First of all, I appreciate Director Nelson's comments about the safety and security funding that, we directed, and gosh darn, that there better be some great entrances out there at this point with some very safe access points. For just to summarize where I would be coming from, I want to know what has the best return on investment, and that includes addressing some of that deferred maintenance and investment that way so that it has future payoff, and also what impacts the highest number of students. And I don't know if it has to be necessarily one big project transformational. I don't think that's going to get, people aren't going to see themselves across the district if it's all just Palmer High School. But I do think we should have an interest in what sets us up for future success. So I don't know, maybe there should be a poll or something, again, community feedback or a focus group. Would it look better to a focus group that we are targeting one school and we can point to that and say, see what a great job we did? Or would it be better to have several projects like we did at Adams to say, see what it could, the investment that we're doing to set up the district for future success, these types of investments, we can do these and we can even get better with greater projects. So to me, it's, return on investment, highest impact for students. Thanks.
Dr. Ott, I just want to ask a clarifying question on return on investment. Are you talking about financial return on investment? Are you talking about impact on students as a return on investment? Are you talking about reductions in deferred maintenance return on investment? What's the highest priority from an ROI standpoint? Is it purely financial, or are there other aspects that you want to consider in that?
The financial investment is the return on investment there, because that gives us more money to invest later. I think that's important. But I understand that if you do that all in the background, people aren't going to understand that. So that we have made a change, because they can't see in a boiler room where we've just cut our energy use 50%. So I understand that we have to have some visibility. Does that make sense? But that impact on students, yes, it'd be nice to have some obvious something to show for the effort.
Thank you. One of the things is you did mention we are using data to inform the decisions. So does the data indicate that we have significant loss of students at, say, a Palmer High School? And by renovating, modernizing this building, we would be able to significantly capture some of those students in the long run. Palmer has a potential, I don't know what the Palmer enrollment now is, 1,200 students. By doing that, we can get more, maybe 600 more students out there, 800. That's a return on investment that we are talking about, enrollment increasing at Palmer.
It'll pay for itself.
Would we have the same type of impact doing 6 elementary schools or 4 elementary schools that you're talking about, capturing 600 more students? Then the student impact by providing that high quality environment, educational environment, where is it in the facility condition index or whatever you're talking about the building is, and then by improving that, you're talking about Palmer having several building classrooms underground without it. The quality of the environment for that learning environment for those students are going to be significant. Overall, that to me is a return on investment to capture it. And then I understand and I know what Director Art is talking about, the going out surveys and things of that nature. But at some point in time, we have been elected by this community to represent the people out there. So we have to make that decision and not always count on and we do want to, and I'm not saying we don't want community feedback at all. We do want community feedback, but we can't every single decision be dependent on the community. I would say that that's why we have been elected to put out here, to make decisions that impact our schools out there. But we do want to engage our community and have that.
So if we get 600 students at 10 grand, there's your payment.
Yeah, so look at it from that perspective. Where is it that we are going to get the maximum number of students coming in by renovating our high school? We already talked about this year, the enrollment looks strong in elementary schools. So investing a lot of money into elementary schools, is that going to really get us the bang for the buck when we are already getting that elementary schools are the small thing? So then the middle and the high schools are where we are losing kids, the transition from 5th to 6th grade and 8th to 9th grade. So where is it that we can renovate our secondary schools and get the bang for the money? And more so, if it is Palmer or Doherty or Coronado or even Wasson that is identified as one thing to go into deep, maybe the length of it could be other high schools. I think that's what Director Jurgensen was talking about more so. And then elementary schools, we will set aside some money, but that's my perspective from there. And I think if even we are going at the $50 or the $60 million for one school and leveraging the outside business interest out there. So my indication is that outside business interest, the city interest and stuff like that, it's more accessible for Palmer as opposed to in any other option. So we can get more bang for the money with Palmer High School because of all the interest in development out there and the partnership out there. Would that be right to say?
Yes.
Okay, as opposed to going to a middle school, 3 middle schools, and you are going to get $1 for $1, but at Palmer you may get 1.3 or 1.4.
I think it offers the most substantial partnerships that there's already some, potential around.
So a $50 million investment at Palmer could potentially be $70 million when you include all the other outside sources. That's a return on investment bang for the money that Director Art is talking about.
So in terms of next steps, I mean, when we come back in September 6th, which feels like tomorrow, but our job is to come back with a little more, synthesized scenarios, but also show some of those impacts and return on investment, whether it's enrollment, deferred maintenance, but get a little bit deeper into some of the things we've heard today. Here's the impact, projected impact on enrollment. Here's projected impact on deferred maintenance. All the different things we've just talked about, but show that in a very visual way.
And the last thing from my point of view, and I know that different board members suggested different things, we represent the whole community out there. And my concern is if we go investing $120 million into one high school, then we are going to hear back from other constituents from other quadrants that are going to say that we have little or no impact. And the community that I live in northeast part of town, they don't have any access to Palmer. Hardly any of them go out to Palmer, and they are not going to see any of the impact out there. So doing that T-shaped thing makes a little bit more sense to me, a transformational change in one high school at about $50 to $60 million while covering other quadrants, so they feel like they also got something back in return.
Can I ask a really quick question? It's on every slide pretty much, bathroom upgrades. Are we talking like new tile, or is it now we're gonna have floor to ceiling, stalls, what does that mean?
Yeah, I don't think we've got to the point of actually designing what it looks like, but I think it's improving the quality and the feel and the experience of bathrooms. Okay. We heard from student surveys, bathrooms are the place they do not want to be in buildings. They don't feel safe. they don't feel welcome in there, any student.
But it's
So-
not necessarily like rebuilding like single unit,
No.
because that would, I think,
No, it's
we
just a
don't have
bathroom
the
remodel.
floor plan for that, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, alright,
Okay,
thank you.
and it is, based on what was just stated, you know, we're going through redesign work primarily in our middle schools. And I can't tell you how loud that statement is from our middle schoolers. That, okay, the building is the building, the bathroom, I avoid anything because of how it feels and looks and the experience there.
Yeah.
And then we showed you last week some renovated bathrooms. And so I think we're gonna see a different experience in those. And so that is, if there's one location in all of our schools that has elevated, it is that.
Okay, sounds
Well, I
good.
got
Let's
two
not
comments
go
real
into
quick.
the weeds right
No,
now.
I'm not.
Director
I just
Lopez.
appreciate on your proposal that we have here, that the way you premised everything off the facilities master plan, right, the security, the academic, the way you laid that as a base. For whatever we decide, but that is clear to me, hopefully it stays clear that this decision was based on the work that has already been done. So there has been community input in every one of those areas.
Right.
So it's not like there has not been community input already. So you're gonna actually compound community input, which I really appreciate that in your presentation. Speaking to bathrooms, I went to Japan several times, but I've been through going to Japan. And I went to the airport in Tokyo. And when I walked into the bathroom, I mean, it was such an experience. It was beautiful. It was almost like I wanted to go eat so I could go back to the bathroom. I mean, it was like that. I couldn't believe it. And then I come to the United States and go to the bathroom there in SFO, and it was like a dump. And the contrast and the feeling that I had in two different places over that was amazing. And so I came back and I remodeled my bathroom. I did. I got almost all my bathrooms. I put bidets in and I just did everything. I am never gonna feel like that again because it was such an experience. So, and so that is gonna make a difference because everybody goes there several times a day. And it's gonna affect them. And sometimes we just take it for granted. And I think Americans take it for granted, like, oh, well, I'm just going to the bathroom. But other parts like China and Japan, they take it serious.
You just have to prioritize which is more important.
They take it serious. I'm like, this is amazing.
Because
So anyway,
bathrooms is-
speaking to bathrooms, that's very important.
Director Art. Director Art,
All right, I'm not sure I took my hand down earlier, I'll do that. One other thing that came to mind was, as Director Nelson noted, the air conditioning again, and I think we need to keep that in mind as part of our investment in our students. Thanks.
Okay. Seeing no, we gotta move on.
Okay, it's a work session. So the feedback that I'm getting from it is, and I know that I think a couple of directors stepped out, or maybe one director stepped out. The feedback that we can give to them is anything specific, can we narrow down those options a little bit so that when they come back, they don't need to talk about all those various options that are there. Is there a consensus on which direction the board would like to
It
see?
didn't sound like anybody was in support of 4.
Yeah.
The like broad,
Yeah.
including the energy work. We will continue to bring that energy work forward. But it didn't sound like that in terms
And the
of,
focus on 3, mainly the elementary schools, is, can we take that off the table too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Concept 3.
Yeah, concept 3 and concept 4, if we take both of those out of the table, what about concept 5? Just invest in one school and narrow transformational change, which,
Fine for that.
okay,
Keep that one up for stakeholder feedback.
okay. And any input on where we put about $50 to $60 million in one of the high schools deep in there, and then spread the rest of the money into the 3 other quadrants. So that would mean roughly about $20 million in each of the other quadrant, maybe more specifically at the secondary schools in those quadrant. That's the one that I favor. I don't know how many others would like to see that one.
We'll bring you scenarios around those.
You can put those two scenarios.
Okay, put those two.
Can you do a scenario that is also about CTE
CTE,
more
yeah.
oriented.
Yeah.
And whatever you think that should look like.
So then the focus being on Wasson or some close.
I don't know, I just threw
Okay,
that
good.
out
We'll-
as an
we'll come back with some
example.
ideas.
Yeah.
And then just to clarify, triangulate data, all of the previous feedback and all of that data with new feedback that we're gathering into kind of themes of what we're hearing about potential projects. And then the axis that we want to compare ROI against is enrollment and kind of deferred maintenance is not maybe the only, but the two primary.
And the amount of money we'll gain for more students in a high school, more students in, that's a lot of money gonna come in if it comes to
Where do we
fruition.
have the potential to capture the more students? Where do we
Yeah.
have the potential to impact the more students? Is that at Palmer? If so, so be it. And then maybe even identifying specific projects in the other three quadrants.
Related to
Yeah,
those
just
areas.
just an overall this. Now we can go back again to the community to see is those the projects that we want to, but identify about 3 or 4 projects in each of the quadrant where we can spend $15 or $20 million in each quadrant.
Yeah, I think we got the feedback we needed to now execute on getting additional feedback and building out more specific models for the board.
Okay.
With the CYA and kind of Daniel's points as well.
Yeah. Okay.
What does that mean? See what
Ask your dad.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to the next one, I think, first we wanted to, by the way, Superintendent Gall had to step out because he has to go to a school meeting. He will be back to join us a little past 7 o'clock, and what Superintendent Gall suggested is that we move number 3 item on the agenda. He suggested that Dr. Koliki will carry that conversation in his absence.
He suggested what?
He suggested that Dr. Koliki can carry that conversation in his absence. He doesn't need to be there. He may need to be there more for the HR recruitment and hiring update. So Dr. K, let's start with the staff culture and climate survey results.
As they're getting pulled up, I'll just give you a little bit of history on this. So this was given in May, early May of last year. This is, if you've been around these halls for a little while, in the past, our climate and culture survey has been orgometrics. That survey was designed to kind of check up and measure alignment to the strategic plan and vision. And that language has kind of changed, I think, given board priorities, and thank you, and different approaches. And so as I was talking to Mike through these different things, he tasked me with designing a climate and culture survey that's more aligned to the language that we use within our schools for school improvement planning, and that is the 5 essentials. So what you'll see here is something that's very closely aligned to the 5 essentials. I squeezed out 4 essentials, and this was done with the permission of the company as well as Chicago Impact. So it basically, why the pivot and why the use of these data? So it provides us the same language for planning and improvement purposes we're using with schools and expecting schools to use. It provides data that's related to your request for to be able to monitor staff climate and culture in a pretty responsive way, and a way that's usable by directors and by teams throughout the district. It also provides actionable data for chiefs and area superintendents to that same point. Really a critical piece is that as we have designed and really leaned into this central hub of supports kind of model. Boy, I really cleared out the room.
Yeah, I know.
It's not you.
Its effect on people.
Once you
Usually
start
takes the
talking.
usually takes the UIP to do that, so I'm so it allows us to evaluate the effectiveness of that lean-in model that Mike talks about with really being embedded as teams from central admin out to schools. And then finally,
Are we worried about the trends that we had with orgometrics through those years of having that survey versus now moving to a new survey?
I think I'll speak to that a little bit now. When we talk, we'll look at the language, and I'll try to draw that through line for us. And then provides climate and culture metrics for KPIs and our own internal processes. So when we jump in to look at who participated, We can see that we got 32% overall participation rate, which is okay. We would like to shoot for greater than that, but anything above 30% is generally good. So it was predominated by ESP, so educational support professionals. That will become a big part of the conversation moving forward. And so 62% ESP, 12% exec pro. By work group families, you can see who really took it. And this was given before all the different alignments or the realignments and the restructures. So you'll see language that we don't use anymore, such as business services. That's now been split into two. So we'll be changing that for future. Yeah.
Sorry, are you saying the teachers didn't take this then?
That was my question.
That's correct. So who did not take this? Teachers and students, because teachers took the survey as 5E. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
As we look at the results and kind of look at how we apply those results, that might be worth a change and an adaptation, depending on what we want to use the results for. But it was essentially the teacher survey, and with language switched to reflect more a supervisor role, right? So if a teacher is answering that same item on the 5E, they're answering it generally about the building level principal leadership. So now took that same question, but now if a principal's answering it, they're answering it about an area superintendent or central administration in general.
Dr. K, can I add one little point there real quick? And I apologize if you said this. It really is trying to hold us as accountable as we're holding our building principals, right? That survey, and we exposed that, and so it was trying to say, hey, we should be responsible for that same level of data and being responsible to reacting to that data in the same way.
Yeah. The one exception to teachers were deans and teachers who are fulfilling kind of leadership roles within their buildings. They were added to that sample. I want to highlight work group family other. So those are folks that were not housed at schools or central admin. That had the potential of becoming kind of a broad bucket that people put their answers in, either one for concern of being identified or just not knowing, I'm not quite sure where I work, so I'll go to other. So they defaulted to other. That category, yes. There was language in each question that said, think about where you spend the majority of your day to try to guide that. But that category needs tightened up some. By area location, you can see we broke it out into areas as well for to allow area superintendents to kind of gauge where their folks are at, and then also just going back to that real dial-in, step-in service model. Where can we put more resources, or where do we need to put more focus? You'll see that there are not participation rates by area because I didn't have a good way to really calibrate how many people were out in an area. So it's just simple sample size. So that is one, this participation model is one area for improvement for next time. So I apologize for the tiny print, but what do the scores mean? So we are using the exact same language as we used with 5E. So not yet organized for improvement, somewhat organized for improvement, mostly, and then well organized. So below 25 to negative 25 to positive 25, 26 to 75, and so on. So the real key thing in each of these categories is the chance that you have systematic change in your division, in your team, in whatever work you're doing. So not yet organized means that people are not really seeing any kind of, like, let's say collaboration for an example. I don't commonly see collaboration. If I do, it seems pretty ad hoc, and there's really no system that supports it. When we get to somewhat organized, there's a small chance that there will be significant improvement because you see it more commonly. So teams will say, I see collaboration relatively often, but there's still no systematic approach. Mostly organized is telling us that all components for significant improvement are in place, but they're not quite systematized yet. So it'd be very common for an employee or staff member to see collaboration happening, but it's still kind of leader-driven, you might say. It's not systematic to the work. So once that leader leaves, you would see it kind of possibly regress backwards. well organized, it's systematic, and you have all the pieces ready for improvement and ready for innovation. And so it is leader proof, meaning that if a new leader comes in, those systems are in place and the team keeps functioning at the same level. The essentials themselves, again, same language as 5E. Really, it's 4E because we're missing ambitious instruction. We're not looking at that. So organizational trust is the first essential. The degree to which staff feel their leadership views them as valued and valuable in the work of their division. Collective responsibility is an interesting one, and it's phrased exactly the way that 5E phrases it. And it is a reflection of an individual as to the degree to which their team is on the same page as they are. So they're not answering it about themselves, they're answering it about their team. There's a lot of interesting research that says you get more honest feedback and more down to where the team is cohesive or not cohesive when you start reflecting on how other people are aligning their work. It's really interesting. So then professional support, degree to which staff feel free to discuss challenges with their leaders as well as being invited to give feedback. And then collaborative practice is what I was just talking about, the degree to which staff consult with one another on workplace practice and collaboration with each other. So those will be the 4 essentials that we really talk about. And again, if you remember on 5E, under each essential is a list of measures, and under each measure is made up of 3 to 5 questions or individual items. So when we jump into these, I first want to, and in perfect timing, Dr. Greg X and I collaborated on this. He was able to work with the data that I gave him to set up a Power BI dashboard that's available within the district, so that these findings can be used at the team level to drill down to individual items. So what I'm going to be doing and what I'm coaching other teams to do is, with your team, go to the individual item. You might have a team of 5 people, right? We're not going to be asking a survey of 5 people because they're going to be easily identifiable. But now I can start using those items, those individual questions and those measures to really generate deeper conversation within a team meeting, within a team retreat, and things of that nature. So all of these data are available down to the item for every leader in the district. So thank you, sir, for your help on that. I think it's a really powerful tool. So these visualizations that you'll be seeing are straight off the Power BI dashboard. So the first one in collaborative practice. The real takeaway here, the headline is that most staff are feeling and seeing strong areas of collaboration in their teams. Business services, again, old language is now CRO and COO. And the superintendent's office are well organized for improvement. So I mean, again, just remembering, well organized being, it's pretty common to see collaboration happening in these, from the perspective of the staff. It's common to see collaboration happening. Is it fully systematized? Not quite yet. It's getting there, but it's a common practice. So we have well organized for improvement, having consistent systems. Tech services is moderately organized.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
On your numbers on your graph, is that on a scale to 100, or because you just kind of stopped there?
Yeah, great question. I don't know how geeky you want me to get on this answer, so I will go mild geekiness. So what these numbers really are standard deviations. So what I wanted to avoid was averaging everything, because by the time you average an essential into a measure, into an item, you're going to get the average, right? You're going to be right in the middle. So these are actually frequencies that we would expect. So within a frequency of a populate or sample, we would expect a strong or well-organized group to be at least above the first quarter standard deviation. A well-organized is going to be above a half a standard deviation above the mean. Right? So if you think about the curve, you're kind of shifted pretty far up there. That's as far as I'll go on that. Mm-hmm. It's a z-score, actually. If you really look at it, I'm going to go. It's a z-score times 100. So when you see a score of 25, it means it's a quarter standard deviation above the mean. So it could, in theory, go way, way, way up there. But if you're looking at scores of 50, scores above 100 are well organized. And we'll actually see some of those in some pretty exciting areas.
So the answer is it goes above 100.
It does go above 100.
Well,
It goes infinitely.
It depends
either side.
yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
It just depends on how you're measuring it.
Correct, yeah. So many iterations on that. It was a kind of fun process. So great question though, thank you. So tech services moderately organized for having systems of collaboration in place but not yet consistent. All other families are somewhat organized. So again, somewhat meaning you might see it in fits and starts, but it's not a very common thing, and it's not at all systematized. By area, this is a real key takeaway that's going to be highlighted on just about every slide.
Yeah.
Staff working at sites other than schools or central administration, so this is the other category that I mentioned, are not yet organized for improvement. So they are low across all of those areas. It does make sense as you are more distributed from the central hub of the school or the central admin, that collaboration does become a challenge, but that's something that we really have to tackle.
So that's like janitors, cooks, those type of people, and it's hard to organize, like you said, they're everywhere.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Staff, so the next one, collective responsibility. So remember, this is the reflection of how aligned other people are to the work that you believe is critical. So staff is struggling to view colleagues as equally committed to improvement as they are. Work group families, business services, superintendent's office, tech services, and AL&L, achievement, learning, and leadership. So I didn't define that acronym. Are moderately organized, having some components of shared commitment in place, but not consistent. All other families are somewhat organized. So just remember at the previous one, we had pretty well organized. Now we're looking at the highest being moderately organized. All other families are somewhat organized, meaning staff feel they lack a shared commitment to improvement. You may see it in little pockets, but it's not shared.
What's central quadrant again? I'm sorry.
Central quadrant are those schools where people. I am assigned to a building, and it's going to be, I do most of my work or spend most of my workday in one of those central quadrant schools, central area schools.
So it's one of the area superintendent schools. I think Northeast should be area superintendent Joyner School.
Correct.
And then Southeast was Ms. Callback Schools.
So it's all the quadrants
Yeah.
schools.
And then Central, is it Mr. Relic Schools?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Central Quadrant would be Mr. Relic
Oh,
Schools.
I see, all quadrants, okay.
And the question that
All here is achievement, learning, and leadership.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
Not
ALL
all.
is achievement leadership.
Yeah, I didn't see the other quadrants, I apologize. So that's just central quadrants, and keeping in mind, this is exec pros and ESPs.
Correct.
And the one that falls under other, that would be all the ESPs. is that-
Multi-sites.
Yeah, those would be multiple site, not central or not schools.
Okay.
So it could be Tesla, it could be FOTC, it could be other places like that.
the question for
again-
each area, where are those at?
Each area,
Because you got this from a survey,
The
right?
question is for your collective responsibilities
Yeah,
section.
how did you gain the data? What
what tool, what actually?
survey
the survey questions, they're not here, right?
No, this is just a
They're
summary.
not here, but they are accessible to leaders through the dashboard. These questions were adapted straight off the 5E.
Can you send those to me?
Certainly.
I like to get geeky.
Yep, I can send you, and the coding.
Yeah,
and-
just, I will love it.
Get it.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, would love to. It was basically taking the majority of the teacher survey questions that we used for 5E, adapting them to a broader workplace context. School-based staff are feeling disconnected from shared mission and vision of central administration, having a low to moderate degree of trust that central admin is working towards the same goals of improving as they are.
Remind me again, when was this survey again?
May, early May.
Towards the end of the year. That's a good time. That's when I'm sick of everybody.
Get the most honest, get honest responses, right? So going to the next measure then, and let me know if you need me to go back. Organizational trust. So staff is struggling to feel their work is valued and valuable by the district. So again, we have it in places. So work group families, tech services are moderately organized, meaning they have trust their work is valued and valuable in most cases. All other families are somewhat organized, meaning that there are pockets of trust, but on the whole, they don't have systems in place to ensure that this is the case, to ensure this over time. So on school-based staff, again, school-based staff are generally feeling undervalued by central administration. In some locations, there are positive areas to build on, but not yet.
So how do you come to that conclusion, school-based staff are generally feeling undervalued?
That is, so it's not represented on this slide, but when we look at breaking it down by work group class, so like ESP, there was an option for school-based and non-school-based, and then they answered for the quadrant. So that second to last bullet came from those data.
And was this before or after we announced the great raises for ESP?
That's a great question. I believe it was before.
Yeah, because then you think like a bulk of the sample size is ESP, and I wonder, showing those raises. I mean, if I got that info and then I went to a survey, like, yeah, we just got a big raise, like, great. Like, I probably would have skewed my data, But if this is before that, it's the end of school year, they're tired. I know I'm not trying to, disregard this data. It's very important that we look at it. But just some things that I'm thinking about,
Absolutely.
giving big raises and all that.
Yeah, and at the end of the year, they're a little more tired and mad at each other, whatever, it's a little different climate. So there's a plus or minus there.
Yeah. And again, the usefulness, the actionability of these data are for a team lead or an executive director or a director to take them and just to use them as discussion points within their teams. So. And then professional support, staff struggling to discuss challenges with their leaders and feel their feedback is valued. So work group families where this is moderately organized or tech services again, so they generally feel supported to discuss those challenges. All other families somewhat organized. So again, it's not that it's not there, but it's not systematized yet.
Sure.
And there may be pockets where it is truly not there, where people are feeling somewhat maybe threatened or insecure or intimidated to share these challenges. So that again, somewhat organized there. School-based staff again are generally feeling their feedback is undervalued by central administration. I'll show you to the question prior, I think on the next slide, it'll show kind of how these are distributed across the measures. In some locations, there are positive areas to build on, but again, systematizing them is really the key point. So it's not that they're not there, it's that we haven't systematized them and really built them into our practice. So some subgroup observations. This one is really exciting because we all, I think, acknowledge, I think I've heard all of you say this at some point, that principals are the driving executive of school improvement. Like they are the chief academic executive of their building. So principals and assistant principals are organized to well organized for improvement across almost every essential. So when you break it out by, again, this is off the dashboard, when you break it out by a principal and assistant principal, they are a team that is ready to go and are seeing these areas of collaboration. The follow-up question then is, do their staffs feel that? To what degree is that transcending and moving across the building, across the organization? But I thought this was exciting because this is a key piece where we want to see this collaboration and this work out. On the flip side, however, ESP, so education support professionals, are struggling in every essential. So what you see there is how this is broken out at the next level, right? Across individuals, across essentials, and then we can actually look at, we don't look at how each question was answered to avoid personally identifiable information, but we do look at how each measure was answered with those questions. And you can see that ESP across almost every essential and every measure is somewhat or not yet organized.
And I think again to your point that this was taken today, that those numbers might improve simply because not only of the pay raise, but the extra training days that were given into the calendar and the turnout that we've had for the ESP trainings. That's been really wonderful.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see again in the next round to see what kind of bump or what kind of return on that investment comes about.
When is that next round?
We'll probably try to do it in the late spring again.
Yep.
To keep it consistent. And again, I think a lot of times it's helpful for us as humans to be reminded of what was the outcome. you guys, I think you guys kind of knew this. You had a feel for this before any data showed up. So you responded. And as we get into the year and get into the grind, it's helpful to hear from the data that we have.
Did it work?
This is the response, yeah. And did it work? Yeah. So ESP are struggling in every essential, not yet ready to take on, support new initiatives until these are happening. I am meeting with, I don't think he's here, I'll be meeting with Kevin tomorrow to get his input and his approaches as to how, because I think when we take these data, they become actionable at the individual relationship level. Like we can sit here and look at a graph and make guesses, but until we talk to people who are experiencing the thing, we're not using the data to its full potential. And so I feel like he has definitely an inside scoop on, let's not guess what's gonna make people happy, let's actually talk to people. And to your point, talk to people about what's gonna work. So that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow and collaborating on that. Staff working at sites, again, are another area of challenge and improvement that we can do to make sure that they're brought in and feeling included and a part of that team. So some follow-up actions, I think called these out, explore, invest better ways to support school-based ESP. I think that's a critical takeaway from these data. Build staff climate and culture metrics into KPIs so that we're actually not just measuring performance outcomes and on the normal scale, but we're looking at building in climate and culture components into our own improvement work. And with teams, I would say this is the most actionable item. With teams, dig down deep, take individual questions and use them as even discussion and dialogue in a staff meeting, in a retreat, or something of that nature. And then invest to make staff working at sites other than schools and central admin feel included, valued, heard, and having an avenue to be included in that work. Because it would be very easy out at FOTC or out at some of these farther flung areas to not feel connected to what's going on. And we know that bus drivers have a big piece of climate, right? We can't assume that building a positive climate across the district stops at one level or another. It doesn't. It transcends every level of our organization. So investing in that will be an important piece. So thanks for your time. Great questions. Are there any follow-up questions or discussion?
Okay. Follow-up questions from the board. Director Daniels.
I'm just curious. I did ask Dr. Comfort, but I'm gonna ask you. When they're taking this survey and they talk about central admin, is this considering the board? I know you are supposed to separate it out, maybe, but when a person takes this type of survey, I wonder if they lump that in there as well.
It's hard to answer for people taking a survey, but I would say probably not, or to a very limited degree.
Okay.
Because I tried to phrase the questions, because it was, as I read the questions, I put myself in like the thinking of somebody in all sorts of roles. And so I tried to really frame the question to be where you spend the majority of your day, what supervisor you report to directly, kind of that language. So I would think that would drive them to their immediate supervisor, not to you.
Just checking, because, where else are we housed other than central?
True.
Just thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Okay, any other thoughts or feedback at this time?
Well, I think it's great. I always like your data. ESP, I think something simple like, because appreciation day, appreciation bar, something that is tangible to them by quadrant, because the janitors, what do they get? Nothing. They get their pay, but they're not really considered. They're always hidden in the buildings. They're not brought up like highlights. They're always in the back. And when I go to schools, the first person I talk to is the building manager. I don't want to talk to principal because they'll they shine their shoes and everything. And they look all good and they're lying. But when I talk to building manager, they tell you what's happening. But they're the ones that know the climate. I think that's a good task.
And to kind of expand on that, when I was talking to Chief Odom, now she is located in the FOTC building. She talked about the disconnect that Dr. Kalaki is talking about, that they are out there in FOTC. And one of the things that and I also encouraged her to do is when they have get-togethers out there, invite the board. Okay, so you will see invites coming to the board, and the Director Bankus and I were there when the transportation staff were being recognized, and then the other time I was there for was it something else that came before that out there? But it's she wants to see more of the central admin, including the board, visiting FOTC so they can feel connected to it and they feel appreciated and valued and their voice is being heard. So you will see those invitations coming out to you, and as and when your schedule allows, please see if you can attend. And maybe not all board members need to attend everything, maybe one or two represent each event kind of thing, and we kind of divide it up among ourselves.
To your point as well, so the appreciation piece is absolutely critical. I do think it would behoove us to go a couple levels down, because I think from these data, they were particularly feeling low on the low end of having a voice, having concerns, being able to voice concerns, and those concerns being valued and listened to. So setting up systems, healthy systems that allow that for anybody to be able to bring up a concern, talk about a concern, and have it listened to and considered. That's a challenge. I mean, I won't make any bones about that, but I think that is one key piece of a takeaway that that we would see from this is having a voice in the work.
Yeah. Okay, any other feedback at this point in time? Seeing none, we will move on to the last one, the DAC charges at this point in time, and then. Well, I do want to, but my understanding was that Superintendent Gall wanted to be part of that conversation, so I'm waiting for him to come back if necessary. Or is this a conversation about the HR recruitment and staffing, hiring update? Superintendent Gall doesn't need to be there. That was my understanding when he left. He wanted to be part of that conversation.
We can close it. We can explain why the data and why Greg was sitting here, what the,
Okay, we can go with that as long as Superintendent Gall is there by the time to help you.
Okay.
So you want to close
Yeah.
that conversation? Or you want to go right now? Should I go?
Can we go right now? I think Brandon went to go get it.
Can I just ask
He's
a
not
question?
here.
Oh.
Superintendent Gall is not here. He's at a school thing, so, go ahead.
Just real quick, sorry, on the like it breaks it out by quadrants, which I kind of think of as area superintendents. So what about what would be considered, like Scott Mendelsberg? He's kind of comparable, right, with the area superintendents and breakout, so I don't know, are you getting data, I guess, as far as charters and?
That was an oversight on my part, yeah. So opportunity was not given as an area, an option for an area.
Okay,
And that would be added.
I was just curious if it was under one of these
Okay.
others. Okay,
No, it's a need.
thank you.
That part of it is going to be a short conversation, so let's invite the DAC up here. Ms. Clausen and Mr. Kaiser, are you joining us for this conversation too? Okay.
Yes, of course.
So welcome to all the DAC representation that's out there. Ms. Clausen, you're the chair of the District Accountability Committee. And tomorrow is going to be the first meeting of the District Accountability Committee. So welcome in this new role that you have. And then Mr. Panek is also here and Mr. Kaiser is also there. So I know that at the end of the year, you provided a comprehensive feedback report and the board has had time to digest that information. What you want guidance, from what I understand, is the DAC charges that are in front of it. If the current charges are sufficient or if the board wants to provide some type of recommendations in that aspect. And I will give you time to address the board and
Thank you for having us. It's nice to see you all. And we're ready for a new a new school year. So yeah, tomorrow's the first meeting, so I'm excited and quite nervous, so I have to say. Velvet shoes are hard to fill and it's a lot more work than I saw coming. So you did it so gracefully, so long that it kind of looked easier. So, but when I took over or when I started to get more into it, I thought like maybe it's a good time to reconnect and revision like what is it. So I looked like into the policies and what we're doing, and I read again through Velvet Charges. And when we came to present the charges to you at the end of the school year, there was the question, are we going to follow up on this? And that's where I said like, let's follow up on it. And from my understanding is, so the DAC is just a huge representation of our community. And we're here in our position is basically to support the board. We're your extra set of hands and eyes and voices, and therefore it's really, it's up to you to give us jobs and what we're supposed to be doing. And that's what we wanted to talk about. I have a few little things that I would like to share if you want me to start with that, or if you have something you want to share, what you had in mind, go ahead.
No, let's start with what you have.
So one of the things that I had, and I'm going off the proposed DAC charges that was in the last report, and
Let's pull up that page. Could you pull up that page, Ms. Olson? I think it's page 11 of 24. Okay, right there. I mean, maybe make it a little bigger. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
So I feel like looking at it, that communication is a piece that we've been talking about for a while, and I know it's something that's being done, and there's things going, and there's conversations that are already happening. So that's just, I think that's really good. And when we're talking, then the third point was assessment, and we're talking about like, do we want to do more of this in accreditation? And I think we can cover this there. And then the support of the efforts of the family, school, and community partnership that I know that policy is coming. So that work is also being done. So even though it's not written in the charges, it's being done. And then the part underneath, so where it says actively participate in implementation and monitoring of the 11 strategies, there needs a little bit of a word update. And for me, I felt the word development should be in there. So actively participate in the development, implementation, and monitoring. So that was the number 4 in the previous charges, and I would love to add the word development, because we want to be a partner with the district. And in many ways, we're already doing it, and that's why I would love to have the word in there.
Okay, go ahead. Are you done with that? Any more revisions you want to suggest?
No, that's it, and
That's
I
it.
just wanted to tell you that we're also doing other things that we've been talking about. So like one of the things that's in that's actually from the state is that SACs should be a part of principal evaluation procedures and kind of feedback. And there we have, it's not, Velvet told me it's not being done anywhere really. And she has started the conversation with Tanya Nash, right?
Right.
Tanya, and so there's some collaboration there working. So we just wanted you guys to know that that is happening. Because sometimes I don't know if someone's telling you, so I thought we'd take the opportunity to tell you.
Okay, so the only revision you suggested was adding the word development to the
That's-
second last bullet point. Both, have you got any feedback on that?
I'm good with it.
What's that? You're good with that?
it.
Okay. Okay, seeing that no board, I'm looking at Director Art too, she doesn't have her hand up, so looks like you go ahead, please, to include that word development in there. I don't see any concerns expressed by any of the other board members. Anything else from your end? Okay, Director Art gives a thumbs up. Okay,
There's one part that I read in, when we looked through the policy, and it talks about creation and enforcement of conduct, discipline, and attendance. And that's nowhere addressed, but I just wanted to know if there's anything you guys want us to do in that area. I have talked to Chris Brandt, and he said when it comes to the work with discipline, they're planning on bringing the steering committee back. And I asked him to make sure that the community involvement that used to be in that committee is being followed up, to contact the previous members of that committee. Because it's my understanding that there was a lot of community members that were interested in that work. And so I just wanted to see if there's anything else the board wants us as a DAC to do in that area.
okay, board feedback on that, what Ms. Clausen suggested, is there any, you're talking specifically about the discipline?
It says in there, conduct, discipline, and attendance.
Where
So
are you looking at that?
it's in the board policy that I looked at for
About
the
the
DAC, in the
DAC,
DAC
okay.
policy for the, yeah. And I was just wondering, we're doing it somehow, but is that something you want us to do something more, or is it okay with you guys how it's being done? Because it's your decision if you want to charge us on anything of that.
I mean, at the last board meeting, requested we come up with some end of year objectives or goals, and one of my priorities for us to target that I suggested was behavior. And so maybe that ties in nicely, but I don't have like a specific for you today, and I'm not sure what the timing is. This comes to us for approval, if by the time we have our conversation, if we can include it in here, or if this comes before we're gonna have our conversation, so.
So the final charges come to you in October for the official approval. So there
so
is
we have
time
Okay.
to like think about the things that we're just maybe mentioning, and if you feel like, no, we want this written down,
Okay.
then we can write it
Think
into it.
about it.
I would like something about safety in there. I think that'll be something that we could work with you guys on.
Well, the board is going to discuss this at a retreat at some point in time, pretty soon, to figure out the metrics that we want to monitor by the end of the year. And that will be well before October when the charges come in front of the board. So after that conversation, I will circle back with you and let you know what the board is going to, after talking to the superintendent, to have an idea as to what are the metrics that are trackable. And then if you want to have the same things that you can track through Chris Brandt's office, and then provide a feedback at the, as far as whether discipline is trending in the right direction, or, you know, the attendance, and we certainly do not want classrooms which are disruptive with student behavior issues and things of that nature. So if there is a way to track that, so we'll get back to you on that, okay?
That sounds good.
Okay. As far as your membership goes, does it look like you guys are good, or is there any areas that you?
It's looking pretty good. People are often slow to respond, so Lauren is staying on top of it. We'll have basically agreed on, everybody gets a deadline till the meeting tomorrow to say they want to stay on, and then if they don't say, yes, I will stay on, then we'll open it up and say these seats are available. If you don't give a commitment to us, then we don't know where we stand, so the seat becomes open. But she got a lot of confirmations of work that's going on, so.
Keep us informed if there are any openings in specific demographics, or what you are, whether it is on DAC or budget subcommittee or accreditation, and then we can try to spread the word around too and see if anybody is interested.
Yeah, so I'm looking actively for I would love to have a middle school administrator at accreditation, and someone from Tamara Acevedo's team, but we're already in conversation about that, so.
So what you need is a middle school administration.
And I already reached out to someone, but who has time to answer my email this week? So there are better things to do, so I'm very patient with that, and let them get on and maybe add on a phone call maybe next week.
Okay.
So, and you need to make, like, one of the things we normally do if we don't have space on the DAC, like, we need to look at other committees that need other members, and like, Mill Levy Override Oversight Committee really needs members now, like, it is down to a very small number of people, so we really need to try to reach out. I mean, that is not a DAC responsibility, but that is what we, a lot of times if there's people that we don't have a position for them on the DAC, we say, are you interested in this other committee? But I would appreciate if the board would do a push to do that as well, because we just, 4 or 5 people on that committee is not enough to make the kinds of decisions that need to be.
How many are on your committee?
There's 28 on the DAC.
Well, my only comment as far as the DAC, everything you do is we appreciate the hard work. But I do have an issue that when you guys vote and you only have a quorum, we can't make a decision without a quorum. And so I don't think it's appropriate for you guys to make a decision if you can't have a quorum, because then you don't get a good read of the community. So if there's only, if you only have 10 showing up of 28, I don't think you guys should be allowed to bring a recommendation unless you can maintain your quorum.
So my understanding is that that's a little bit of a different situation, because you actually make decisions that are that follow up into actions. We are making recommendations. Nothing we really vote on is guaranteed in implementation. And I think there's a huge difference in between that. And so when we're voting on something, we say this has the DAC support.
But that's not my concern. If it's a DAC of 28 and we want community input, then I want that broad balance, because if you're gonna, like any organization, it'll begin to shrink, and then it's gonna lean one way. And so without having a quorum, then I'm not gonna get a real read of what the community wants. I'm gonna get a read of what a small portion of the DAC, just like we had a vote, we had 4 people vote and made a recommendation, and that was ridiculous.
The DAC usually has attendance where you don't have that issue. What Director Loma is referencing to is the mill levy override oversight committee, where there was a limited number of people. But the DAC is well attended, my understanding is.
So if you have, I think every committee should, if they're gonna make a recommendation, they need to have a quorum so that I get a good, proper reading of what the community feels.
Okay.
That's my only concern with any committee.
And we do have that for sure in budget does it a lot when there's really voting on budget items. They're very sure on that they have a quorum.
Yeah.
So that's 100%.
And that's important because if there's 28, that means you guys are everywhere.
Yeah,
So you're gonna give us a real good understanding of what the community wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll come to you. Director Loma's input is heard, and
Absolutely.
I don't think I've ever attended a DAC meeting where there are only 10 people. It's more that mill levy override oversight committee where that problem is. And there, the membership itself is 5 or 6 people at this point in time. We need to enlarge it. And then if only 3 of them show up, then it becomes a valid concern out there. Mr. Kaiser.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that that's you, I'm just talking about any community. We need a quorum, because a group, more ideas are better than just one idea,
In answer to that, one thing I know I advocate for is that you get what the vote was. In other words, 3-2, was it 5-1, not approved or unapproved?
26-2.
That way you know kind of which way it went. The other thing, if I may, I would highly recommend or love to have the board take a really hard look at the recommendations that were in that DAC report from May and June again, and see about, particularly the one on communication, being looked at really hard and where you could go with them. Maybe even give feedback back to the DAC, because I know that all of us, and particularly Velvet, put a lot of work in on those recommendations.
No, I look at your report, that's a lot of work. You're working hard.
Okay, thank you. Valid enough. Okay, that communication at all levels, we want to improve that, and I know that you guys are also making a concerted effort to improve the communication to the SACs down there. So, board members, do you have any input on what Lyman's concern was at this time? Any input or feedback that you want to give them specifically at this point in time? Or about the communication piece that you referred to.
Just that it's a constant conversation at all levels. And I don't think it's ever gonna get solved. I think it's one of those things we can just continue to make it better and better.
And that family school community partnership will also hopefully improve that communication better with our families.
I think that you listed quite a bit of things that we need to consider as a board, and I would love to see us really dig into the document and how that would build processes. That's what I'm hearing, processes that we need to come up with so that the funnel is flowing and not just stopped one place and then no one else knows what's going on. And I see that you've done a lot of work, even when it comes to asking about the STAR reporting and getting that data and making sure you have it in time and all of those things. So we have a lot of work that we can do with dissecting the document and making sure that we're actually doing it or not. So thank you for that.
You have access to all the STAR assessment data, don't you? I mean, Dr. Koliki provides all that information to you, including the CMAS testing data that you guys have signed confidentiality agreements to look at.
Yes.
But was that recommendation that parents needed access and how to communicate to parents how to get the
That's
things?
what it is.
I mean, that's our point too, like we want, parents need information. I mean, I love the email that you sent out today with those things, but parents have to know how to get some of the things they need to be able to participate in their students.
Perfect.
Like,
And to support that,
So it's not necessarily from the DAC, it's a recommendation for
Parents.
parental things, like, you know, I mean, that's the kind of things that we're looking at as well and pushing, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. And that's our pledge out here with this card, that parents are going to be an integral part of everything that we do. So certainly areas for growth and opportunity, and that's the feedback that you provided. So let's look at it by the end of the year if there is going to be improvement in that area. I'm not saying that we are doing a stellar job in that area, but we can certainly improve that. Okay?
Do you have this?
I mean, I got it in the email today. I have kids in the district,
There's one
so-
up there.
Yeah, no, and the other thing I'll say, like, I did some work this summer really looking at what SACs are supposed to be doing. So I mean, I think we're gonna be trying to do a push more this year to try to really make sure that school accountability committees understand what they're supposed to be doing, because you know, it's hard sometimes to be able to do the things that need to be done, and you know, it's important. The work that they're doing is important. So
You guys helped get all of the SACs fully, what's the word? Not employed, but.
Well,
I know
SAC
that-
chair.
Have a
Yeah,
SAC chair at
and
every
that
school.
was- Yeah, I know that was a big push that you guys pulled off last year. Thank you for doing that.
We still got probably work to do as we move into the new school year, because there's always change, so we're definitely continue that push. And I had a chance to talk to the new assistant principals and principals at their training and offer our support and say, like, if you need anything, come and reach out, because it's important to us to know that they know what it's good for and why they need it, and that they're not alone in that search for that person. And the person's not alone and saying, like, I don't know what to do. So there is support from us, and there's a good team that's willing to do the work.
Okay.
So really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. So the two things were include the word development out there is the thing, and then the second thing was about student behavior and all those issues, and which we will circle back, and I will provide the board input.
And then you said we'll come back at the end of the year. Did you mean the physical year or the school year?
I meant the school year, as far as like, you talked about some of the recommendations that have been provided to
When it
you at
comes
this
to-
point in time. So at the end of the school year, when you provide the recommendations, we will certainly have conversations, maybe in the middle of the year, it'll be the budget conversation that you have, mid-year budget or anything else that may come up at that time. But at the end of the school year, some of the recommendations that you have provided have they been advanced at this point in time in this academic year? Or are we still struggling in communication that you identified? Are we still struggling with the assessment data not going to the parents? Are there concerns that you already raised out here in this set of recommendations that are not being acted upon? That's the feedback we want to see, that hopefully that this information is with the administration too, and they are listening, so we want to see that some of the actions are enacted.
I would like to see when the DAC talks about this communication piece, how it is that for the general user, not people who are involved in school, but parents, community members, how they can access the information so they're not running all over the place trying to find it. There's gotta be an easier way to simplify how we give them access.
Yeah, I have
The names of
trouble
some of
with
those,
that
the
too.
names of some of the opportunities, it's like, how would I have ever known that the volunteers were under community engagement? I'm looking for volunteers, I understand volunteers, and on and on and on, but you try to look for.
I know what you say.
Yeah,
And that's the kind of feedback that we give, but then like you get pushback, like the website's gonna be updated this year, so we're not gonna update some of those things yet, right? So it's a constant, it's a constant
I would like
input.
to support that constant
I mean,
conversation. to
Power
make it
School's gonna be
easier.
updating their parent interface, and I mean, we're gonna be looking at that and giving input on that, and I mean, you know, we'll have to continue to do that.
Peachtree is another, or Peach Jar?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another one, so something simpler, and anyway.
I
also-
agree.
Yes, thank you.
100%.
I have a question on page 13 in the third paragraph. It's the one that says, the review of dropout rates shows an increased number by 85% and a current dropout rate of 70.9%. So how do those two figures come together? Do you want to see it?
That's my report.
Which
That was
paragraph?
from mine, that's.
Page
Oh.
13,
Now I have to dig deep in my head where
Page
it's
13.
page
So
13,
there-
third paragraph.
Accreditation.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's a little
right
bit
here.
over to the bottom of the page. Right there. Right there. Yeah, the paragraph.
Review of dropout rates.
Can I get back to you with the specific data?
Sure.
If you would have
Because I
asked,
was
if you would have
surprised.
asked me in May, I would have remembered. So now I have to go back and look exactly at that data and then I'll get back to you.
That
But
would be
the-
great.
Yeah.
Because I think we earlier on heard that there were 600 students who didn't finish in the normal time to graduate after 12th grade. And so if this number is varied by that, if there's really a 70% dropout rate, I need to know that. I would like to know that. If that's what that says.
I have to go look back at this,
Okay.
if I forgot a word in this one, or if it's, I'll get back to you,
It's okay.
I'll immediately.
Thank you.
What did I?
Okay, any
I'm so
further,
sorry, my brain is.
any further feedback at this point in time? Okay, thank you guys.
Just how much work you guys all put into this. It's outstanding.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And we wish you, I mean, this is a start of a new year. I hope you get active engagement from parents, and we look forward to all the feedback that you have to provide. Lovely.
Maybe that's a 70% increase from the past numbers, not 70%. That's a high number.
That is a high number. I want to know.
It might just be a 70.
Especially since Mitchell was able to increase their graduation.
I just,
Yeah. Yes. We're done with this.
I'm good at,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
HR recruitment and hiring update. Chief Bailey, you lead the conversation. If Superintendent Gall wants to come and join at the end of it, he will join at the end. I'm not sure where he is at this point.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I have Senior Executive Director of Human Resources, Tony Schoen, here to present the information. And I also have Director and Dr. Gregory X, the Director of Policy and Archival Resources. He is he and Tony and her team worked together to present and put together the slides, the data slides, because Superintendent Gall had a concern about what was our turnover rate compared to our other large surrounding districts. So we brought in Dr. X to help support putting together slides to be able to tell the story and provide irrefutable facts, because he went to the state to get the data to show that we are no different than any other district across the Front Range when it comes to the turnover rate, okay? There were some, I guess, more or less some assumptions that because of, his tenure as superintendent, because of board participation or direction, that our employees were exiting the district. But as you will see from the presentation, that is not the case. Okay? Dr. X, would you like to open before we have Tony?
Yeah, I'll just add before Senior Executive Director Schoen takes over that the slides, we do have two different pieces of data. The first slide is going to be CDE, which is going to be an annual collection December to December. So the turnover rate's very simple. That person was there 1 year, gone the next. And then in the second set of slides, you'll see we'll go a little bit deeper with District 11, which will be from August 1 to July of a school year. So they're a little bit different, but it'll help with when Senior Executive Director Schoen explains what's been done and how we get those numbers.
Thank you, and thanks again for the opportunity to really share, what we've done this year in HR and really dispel those rumors and myths, truly myths of what's going on. So, as you all know, we've gotten lots of briefings. You know how hard the HR team is working to fill our vacancies and to get teachers, support staff, and it really kind of just carries on the conversation that we had with Dr. Colicky and data and where we are. So some of the things that we've done is we've attended many, many job fairs. So this really spans this entire school year. Many of these fairs were local, UCCS, but we also traveled to UNC, which is the largest in-state job fair. We went to Grand Junction. We held our own job fairs. We've had 3 teacher job fairs, 2 large teacher job fairs, and then one that we just focused on our priority schools that had the most significant amount of vacancies. Every year we hold our annual ESP job fair, and from that we had approximately 60 new hires. That's always a success, and so really I think most success came from our own job fairs. But we didn't work alone. I want to give a big shout out to our media department because Deborah and her team have been amazing in getting that word out, not only just about our job fairs, but about all of the incentives, all of our teacher and ESP rates that have increased. So again, it takes a village, and we have had great support on all of our job fairs. Many student-teacher partnerships. Our largest connection is with UCCS and CC. However, we have them from all over the different states. And so it's really, really important to us that we have student-teacher partnerships. One thing that I do want to point out to you, though, is last year we had 67 student teachers. Right now we have 38. It is growing. But I do want to point out that our student teachers are starting to decline. As you all know, there is a huge decrease in teacher education programs across the nation, and we're starting to feel it. Dr. X shared with me that he had heard that the new entering class at UCCS had 1 student declare that teaching was their path. Now let's hope that changes in the next 4 years, but that is a real statistic. So I just read an article this weekend that not only is it a teacher crisis, they called it a teacher catastrophe. So we are really going to keep our efforts up to continue to try to promote our programs because we're not alone. Another program that we just instituted this year, that's our first one, is called a Teacher in Residency Partnership. That is with UCCS.
We have our pilot program at Rudy Elementary. There are 4 student teachers currently at Rudy. The great thing is they are going to be going through all the things that the teachers are going through. They were there day 1 for all the training. They're going to be there through all of their professional development through the end of the year. They may be used as subs. And then at the end of the year, if Julie Fahey, the principal, wants to keep them on staff or recommend them to someone here in the district that is in need of teachers, they can just make that transition very smoothly. So we're really excited to see how that program goes, and then we are confident it's going to be a success and then have that program grow.
So they're all in their final year of college?
Correct.
And that's piloted just at Rudy this year?
Just at Rudy. They only had 4 available, and we had to just find a pilot site, and so Rudy was very, with open arms, accepted the program. But again, Director Gullickson, we hope that it will grow and we'll have other sites next year and we'll be first in the door, Jorgensen, sorry. And we'll be first in the site and we'll have them going right away.
Are they paid?
I wasn't sure if I heard that.
Only if they sub. So when they are working and do those sub, then they will be paid.
Okay, but if not, they're just interns.
Correct, correct.
So
And we
are
have
they
the-
being paid as residents?
As subs, as subs.
They're being
And-
paid sub-pay every day as they go through the whole school year.
I'll have to confirm that. I'm not 100% sure if it's every day.
Because
I
this is
know
not
when they
student
sub.
teaching.
Only when they
Yes.
sub.
Yeah, I'll have to find out. I will
Okay.
get back to you on that because I don't know for sure if it's every day. I know when they're subbing, because we do have student teachers that do get paid when we work with their programs in their colleges. Typically, it's towards the 2nd semester of their last year. They are allowed to sub, and we can enter them as subs, and they do get paid for that work. But I am not 100% sure about the teacher in residency, but I will get back to you.
So when they student teach in the 2nd semester, are they paid as long-term subs?
Only if it is a partnership with their university and their university gives them authorization and permission to do that.
Thank you.
And so this is a brand new program.
Brand new program this year.
Can
Which
I,
is a credit,
since we're
maybe. Which is a
interjecting
credit.
questions, can I ask about the partnerships with colleges and are we, I mean, this is kind of like taking it to the next level, but coordinating with like Tamara Acevedo's team to find out, really strategize the colleges that we want to partner with. Like the state of Colorado now requires the science of reading, and so all of our staff had to go through that programming for whatever K through 3. Do we know that the colleges we're partnering with are teaching their students in the science of reading and that their instructors have also adopted that? I know I have a friend that went through the UCCS program. This was years ago, but at that time they were teaching whole language. And so I just would like for us, to, like I said, next level, let's make sure that beggars can't be choosers. We want teachers, but if we are able to kind of pick and choose who we partner with at the college level, that it's colleges that are pursuing the things that we want. You know what I mean?
Agreed, I think so, yeah. We don't wanna bring somebody in, we wanna set them up for success. And as a former elementary principal, I know, we don't wanna bring somebody in and they don't have that, and then not only are they in their first year of teaching, but now you've gotta go get this endorsement, and do your internship, and do all of these things all at one time, and do your initial licensure. So induction, that's a lot to put on a teacher, and we
And then
don't
they
wanna
wanna
lose
raise.
them. And they wanna raise, right, yeah, I agree, those are a lot to ask from a new teacher.
So just as we go forward, coordinating that
Well,
sort of
they both teach at UCCS. Dr. X and Tony both teach at the university. Teach a
What do you mean?
course.
You currently are professors at UCCS?
I do, I teach the HR course for our principal licensure program at UCCS.
I teach the graduate research project as well as an introductory course to educational research and statistics.
That's awesome. So I guess the question then is whoever is teaching the early, what's it called, early ed programs, and that they're learning how to teach reading, are they utilizing science of reading? As we know that the state requires our staff, and have they adopted that?
Okay. So that's a feedback that Director Nelson is providing you, if you can write that down, and is that some way to track it? That's all. Okay, moving on.
CDE has also, since COVID, really loosened up on their licensing, which has been a great help. What I love is that we are a district that does value alternative licensure. You don't have to have had a teaching degree, you bring your life skills. So different programs that they have for alternate licensures are what we call temporary educator eligibility, intern authorizations, and some of our CTE licensure. Sashi Ward, who is our HR manager, as soon as a person's hired, she works directly with that person to ensure they have the appropriate licensure underway. So there's lots of different criteria of where you would fall, but the exciting piece is that we do, as long as you have a bachelor's degree, we can find you a pathway to get you into the program. And actually, even with CTE, with an associate's, we can find a pathway to get you into the classroom. So
How
that's
long do they
exciting.
have to finish the program?
It depends on which program. BOCES is a 2-year program. Aspire is a 1-year program. Those are the only
Aspire?
ASPIRE.
Okay.
Those are the 2 major programs that we partner with. I know there are others, but those are the 2 we're most closely associated with.
Thank you.
And we don't push any program on anybody. We present that to the person. And typically, they already know the pathway they're going to go, and we help them through the process and follow along with them.
So for them to go down that pathway, what you're talking about, that Aspire and BOCES, do they have to fund that out of their pocket?
They do. They do. Yeah, so that can be a tough on some folks. I don't know what the cost is for each program. You know, again, that's on the individual to do that, but there is a cost involved to that.
And when they finish the program, then they qualify for a license?
They do. They get their initial teacher license after they finish the program.
So is that something like strategically we could consider that we in the future help with tuition and then there's a commitment they have to stay in the district for a certain amount of time? Like we help cover their costs for their alternative licensure? I don't know, is that a thing? We can talk about it another time.
I think the commitment piece is the hardest, is how you really get someone to say, yes, we're going to stay. I think that, I know from historically, I think that's what I've heard, that's the difficulty, because I think we could attract potentially more if we can pay for that, but how can you make somebody stay?
You can't.
I was hired in D2 under an alternative licensure program where they did cover, I think it was $12,000 a year towards your alternative in your master's. And I just had to stay with the district until I finished. There's criteria, but
Yeah, so
I
like was- military, if you go to school, you gotta do your time.
I know private, maybe it's different in education, but you, when I worked at Nestle, they had that sort of thing. And like, you've been committed to stay there for a certain amount of time, so maybe it's different in education. I wanna see what the rules are. Can we?
Well, we did contact legal because we've been looking at this and Deb Meekins did say that if they really said that they wanted to leave, we can't hold them.
But if you sign an agreement, you can make them pay it back.
Yes. I'll ask her about
No,
that.
you can't, you're gonna say, we're gonna give you this money, and
They
then
do
once
it
you
in
complete your 2
hospitals.
years or 3 years, whatever it is,
They do it all
then if you wanna leave, you can leave, but if you leave
Healthcare.
before that, then you're gonna owe us.
Is it still a practice that a teacher or principal resigns after July, whatever that date is, and they've already been paid, they have to pay back the salary after that July date? It used to be July 15th.
Exactly.
There's none of that.
No, we don't.
We're not in agreement with other districts to say we won't steal personnel after July, whatever the date is.
Well, we have what we have
Yeah.
in place is what we call a superintendent agreement with all of our local area school districts. So what that agreement means is that we allow them to hold a teacher up to 30 days, which gives them time to post the position, find a replacement within a reasonable time, and then let that teacher move on. Because yeah, you can make somebody stay, but really all of our conversations in our local HRs is that, do you really want that person to stay?
Right.
That's, once you're ready to go, you're ready to go. But, we do respect that you need that person there for a while for that transition for those students and families.
Great, thank you.
And moving on.
Another new program that we have just started this year is our J1 Visa Partnership. Currently, we are partnering with Colorado Learning. That is a company that most of our local districts are using. District 20, District 2 are partnering with them. And so we do have a current teacher at Wilson. We are, again, making sure that we are in the forefront as we start this year to get into more teachers. So we're looking at up to about 20 for next year, targeting our dual language program, as well as our hard to fills, our math, our science, our ELL, SSPs, and counselors. And those right now currently are our highest vacancies. So we're really excited about partnering and getting those programs in place. What I do want to mention, and this is where, we're probably going to need board support, is that for these programs, we do have to pay for the relocation costs, which can be up to $5,000 per candidate. So that's something we don't have currently budgeted. So we want to look into that so we can really support those programs as our teacher crisis continues.
The relocation cost is from their original country?
It is.
To here.
So we
Do
wouldn't
also
pay for
have to set up-
everything.
Do we have to set up also housing and
That's the company that
transportation?
does that.
The company does that.
So this is another new program.
Yes.
You guys are rocking it.
Well, it's not new, but
We're
it's new
trying to
us.
get out. It's been
Yes,
around, but
new to the
new for
district.
us to start looking into, because we have to be creative. And so we, again, I have to give lots of credit to Sashi Ward, who has really been looking into picking up every rock, and every rock she can pick up, making sure that we are getting teachers. So again, we're just on the forefront of all of these, and I am confident as we enter next school year, we're going to have lots of teachers from these different programs.
And they come to us with college from the country in which they're leaving, is that right?
They do. They actually are educators in their country and wanting to come to America. Right now, probably the largest country is the Philippines. There are other countries, but I think that's the majority that Colorado Learning partners with is the
I was
Philippines.
gonna say, I go to the Philippines twice a year,
All right.
and they're
Reverend
dying.
Lum will have to
You have to have a
visit with us.
bachelor's to work at McDonald's.
Wow.
You have to, I mean, it's crazy. They would jump on them.
D2 has had great success with this program, and so we're really working with their HR and really learning from them. So we really, again, I think we're really ready to really dive full force into this next year. Just the funding will be something we're gonna have to ask for. Additional future partnerships. We've been partnering and working to grow our own. I know we've talked about, you've heard about Superintendent Gall talk about that, and we've been working closely with Dr. Scott Middlesberg and his group over at RJ-WAC to not only build our ESP staff and provide them with opportunities to become teachers, but importantly our students and building that pathway. So we are just on the ground floor of that program. Melissa Burkhart Shields, Annie Friesma, and Linda Sanders and Sashi have all been to some, St. Vrain is a school district that's being and finding success with this program. And so we've been there for a visit, and so now we're just on the ground floor, but we're really excited about growing our own. Another one is Teach for America. Mr. Gall has been involved in that program. Unfortunately, we were just a little bit too late to get their 23-24 teachers, but we are on the ground floor of next year. It could potentially be up to about 30 teachers. It is a 2-year commitment though. We do commit to those teachers for 2 years, and the cost is $3,000 to $5,000 per candidate. So again, that will be a piece that if we need that funding, we'll need to come for funding for that program.
3,000 to 5,000 in addition to the salary we put them on the first step. Is that
That's correct. That goes to the company, not to the candidate.
Okay.
Quick question on Teach for America. They've been around for a while. Have we just never had to use that avenue, or haven't we been using Teach for America?
We did use that. Do you know what school year it was?
2010.
Okay.
Yeah.
We didn't find a lot of success at that point in time with that program, but right now it's a different climate and we want to try, see how that program can come back.
Okay.
I have a different reason.
Big thank you to you, our Board of Education, for not only increasing our teacher salary, but our ESP salary. It has really made an impact and a difference. I've been tracking this information. This is our salary schedule by cell for Mr. Gall, and the majority of our teachers, over half, are landing in what we call that overlay, that yellow zone. This was as of August 10th. We had 160 new hires overall, and those 6 days later, we're at 180. That it changes, I say by the second. You asked me about a hire, and we're just continuing to move them through. I update a weekly vacancy report. Yesterday it was 119 vacancies with 60 in the queue. We processed about 25 again today. So we are as fast as we can. We know we need those teachers in the classroom, so exciting data. So thank you for approving that.
Well, that's exciting to see that what we implemented last year with the new it's directly translating into the hires.
Yeah, 91 of our 160 new hires are in that overlay. Highlighted, overlaid. So we really, it's from that bachelor's right to that master's degree, our new folks coming in. And we're getting quite a few too with master's degree. You can see there's a master's degree with just 1 year of experience or 2 or 3 years of experience, and so that's exciting too. Someone with a lot of education just hasn't been in the classroom, and so we're utilizing those skills and putting them in the classroom.
Good, that's great.
It shows that we are attracting more younger teachers from this overlay that we see. When you see 39 in that BA1 slot, we are attracting more younger teachers.
Non-experienced teachers.
Non-experienced, yeah.
Less experience.
Yeah, but that's directly related to the 50,000.
Correct.
Yeah, they
And
would
that
not
was the
come
goal.
otherwise.
That was the goal.
Right, that's it, exactly. Least experience, we don't wanna talk about age.
No, no,
We
no.
discriminate,
Yeah.
yes.
So
They're
how
all
many years do
very
we give
young.
them credit? When they finish
No.
experience in other districts? Used
Up-
to be 13 or 11, I can't remember.
Right, it's up to 14.
Up to 14.
Up to 14 years.
What did you ask?
How many years of experience that we will give. So if it's a brand new teacher coming to District 11, up to 14 years. Potential within 14 years within the past 15. From the 2008 to 2009 school year, we don't give credit prior to that. And the reasoning is because that was the years we were on freeze of being paid. And so we don't want to bring somebody into the district and have them make more than somebody who's been committed to the district. So that's part of that rationale, but up to 14 years is what they get. So commitments, some of the commitments that were made during our IBB process, during our negotiations were what we want to do for these teachers. And number one is this weekly coaching and observation and making sure that's a feedback cycle that is continually happening with our teachers. Commitment number two is professional learning to further subject matter expertise. We really want to support these teachers and feel not only are they learning about what they're teaching, but also more expertise and providing them those opportunities for professional development. And also that collaborative planning, making sure that they have bi-weekly opportunities for that collaborative planning, because especially as a newer teacher coming in, they have that opportunity to collaborate not only with their colleagues that are just coming in, but ones that are experienced and learning from our experienced teachers that have been there. They know the students, they know the school. So I think that's exciting, an opportunity for them as being a new teacher.
Do we have, I think it's part of law, or at least it was, where new staff or probationary teachers had to be having a mentor and going through an induction program where they have a mentor and they got their 50 contact hours. Are we still doing all that?
We are. That's through Linda Sanders in the PD department. I think they have to do it within their first or second year. I think they have an option. They can bypass the first year.
We're giving new staff mentors and all that.
They have to have it in the first 3 years is that requirement to start that. And then they have to have that to move from their initial license into their professional license.
They're really busy if they have weekly coaching and they also have a mentor.
Collaborative contribution.
Yes.
So, what of this is new on this slide? I mean,
The commitment.
The commitment, making that promise. And I think what, and I Mr. Gall isn't here to talk about that, but I know some of the stories he shares, and I can share it as a former principal, is that's why we lose a lot of new teachers. They don't feel supported. They feel like they're out there on their own, all alone, and they need that support. And I think the district identifying and committing to supporting them is big, because we've said we're gonna do that, but it's never been in writing. And so I think committing to that is, and coming from the top, saying we are going to support these new teachers is gonna make a difference in that retention, and we wanna retain teachers.
Are we still losing teachers after 3 and 5 years as a trend?
As a trend, do you have any of that data? Greg?
Well, nationally, I didn't have, when I looked at the data for D11, which is that second slide, I didn't have years of experience for the teachers that did separate from the district, so I couldn't speculate on D11, but nationally, it's been the same, 3, 5, 7, 10.
Looks like Ms. Acevedo has something to say. Ms. Acevedo?
Yes, thank you very much, President Malpacum. No, I just wanted to expand on those 3 commitments, and I believe Director Nelson asking, are these new? In theory, these ideas aren't new, but it is new that we're making this commitment specifically to teachers that are falling in that overlay, and we've already started on that process. With the start of school, obviously, that's when we'll kick in the weekly coaching and feedback cycles. But we've already started our professional learning very specifically to develop content expertise in mathematics, K-12, and the start of literacy, that trajectory that'll go across the course of the year. The collaborative planning piece will be also very specific to by grade level. So that commitment is newer. The other piece, when Director Jorgensen, I believe, asked about induction, we're looking to, it is a lot. Director Bankus said, wow, that's a lot. It is a lot. That's a lot of pieces for new teachers. And with that, we're looking to readjust our induction programming so it accounts for those 3 commitments. They can actually earn those induction hours based on the 3 things that we're committing to for them and providing for them. So I wanted to add that in. And also, Director Nelson, your point earlier about the need for ongoing collaboration and communication with our higher ed partners for the teachers that we're receiving from them. So we have collaboration that the training is matching the needs within our district, but also the most current needs with science and reading. We have connections, and we need to continue to strengthen those connections. So there's a nice synergy between what we provide and what's being provided through our higher ed partnerships.
Great, you nailed it. Thank you.
When they don't feel supported, is that because of behavioral issues in the classroom, or they're lacking ability to teach?
I think it's a combination of things. I think so. And I know that one thing that Mr. Gall did want to present is that he is working with a subcontractor to really come up with an exit survey that's going to address more specifics, because we don't know, and we want to know what the reasons are for them leaving and be more specific to why they're leaving. So.
I know behavior is a tough one for a lot of teachers to control the room. If you can't control the room, you're done. Mm-hmm. And I've experienced that's been the biggest issue, not that they couldn't teach, that they didn't know how to control the kids.
The flip side of that, though, is make sure that we have students that understand the expectations. It's not always on the teacher.
Well, yeah.
We have to have young people that understand the need to be safe in classrooms. So, but yes, part of the parent partnership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Tamara. That was a great explanation.
Yes, thank you.
So we've been very busy with all of our new positions, and again, for all of our new salaries and attracting more people since March. One of the reasons we moved our retirement dates way back was to open our hiring window so that we would be competitive with the local districts, and we are. So from March through August, we've hired 237 new ESP, 410 teachers, and 49 new executive professionals. So, and actually this is over 700 now. We're at about 725 today as far as hires. So we have been rapidly pushing people through, processing through, but it's the exciting pieces. I think there's a lot of reasons why we're attracting other people, because we have done the right things to attract new folks to D11. But we have upcoming work. We need to continue to refine the process and ensure that we're working on those employee exit surveys, because retention is what we want. If we can get a goal of less than 10% loss in each employee group, that's where we're gonna find success. So that's our goals, and we'll work together in collaboration with lots of folks here in the district to make sure we can try to make that happen. This is our KPI data quarterly, and you've seen our reports. Our two major KPIs, one is from where we receive our EREC, which is the requisition, to the time we post a position. Again, this is data from March through August. Our goal is 80%. So with almost over 700 hires, we were at 77%. I'm pretty proud of that with the volume, though. We didn't get any more people in HR, so we're really, really close to our goal over the course of hiring 700 people. Our second goal is from when we receive a recommendation for employment to when we make the job offer. Again, that is 80%, but over the course of 4 months in sheer volume, we're over 50%. So over half of our offers were made within 3 days. And so we are really proud of the work that we're doing, continuing again to get those teachers in the classroom, our support professionals in our classroom to support our schools.
So give me a base. In the past, what was that? How many days did it take you to make the offer?
It could be, that was still our 3 to 5 days, but we were actually averaging about 7 to 10 days, I think.
So
the
that to
year
me
prior.
means you cut it in half. That's great.
Probably
That's huge.
longer during the pandemic and stuff like
It
that.
was, and there were some, I just took over a year ago, as you all know, or less than a year ago, and there were some really main focuses because there were a lot of concerns. There were a lot of concerns around HR and our hiring process. So we really sat down, we refined what we were doing, and really, I think the proof is where we are. And I think one of the main points is, all of our directors now are former school-based principals. We've walked in their shoes. We know I would say, when you're calling us, you need it yesterday. And so we all have that mentality because we've been in their shoes. And I think that has made a big difference. I think it's been well received by the schools. We're very visible and present. We're at every single K-12 meeting. We attend all of their level meetings. So we are right there meeting their needs as soon as and quickly as we can. And then when we don't, if we make an error, I look them in the eye and I say, yes, we dropped the ball on that one. How can we make this right? And so we've really focused on customer service.
So when we improve and bring your software and your computer to the 21st century,
It'd be like the next day.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, because that's our job.
Yes, we know
That's
the
our next
issues.
step.
And even just, the touches that it takes, you think we just call an offer and they accept. Well, there's so many pieces to getting them entered into the system that just take time. And so that is a lot of the delay.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, our recruiters are an amazing group of individuals, and the hours they dedicate and what they do for this district, I think they kind of get hidden back there in HR, but I have it's not me, it's my team. They are truly amazing. I'm very proud of them.
Tell me again what KPI stands for?
Key performance indicator.
HR is human resources. And data is data.
So just going back to that blue, the blue one that you have out there with the job offers posted. So job offers made, 302 of them, or 51% close to you do less than 5 days. Okay, and then about 46% of them takes more than 6 days.
And usually those are about 6 or 7 days. That's about where that, honestly, there's maybe 1 or 2 if we somehow with that volume. We've had a couple that have fallen through, but for the most part, it's within 5 to 7, which I think is really realistic in our high volume time. From pretty much from September through March, we were at our last quarterly mark was 85%. So we're spot on when we don't have the sheer volume. But 700 hires with really truly 6 recruiters that are running this through. It's amazing how the work that they can do.
Are we giving them a heads up to say, hey, we're in our busy time, an offer's coming, a formal offer's coming, just sit tight, don't run to a neighboring district, things like that?
We do, we try. And that's where we try to do what we call a soft call. just say, you're in the queue, we're gonna give you a call, we're working on it right now. Yeah, but we all, and not only just our recruiters, I do tons of job offers, and there's things that people don't know either. We have been down at a compensation director, an HRIS manager, 2 recruiters for most of this peak season. But that's where we have all just rolled up our sleeves and done what it takes, so, nobody would even really know, but that's the change, I think that's happened over the past year, is that, we just do business as usual, and, just like other schools, they're impacted, we're impacted as well. It's 25% of our staff that we have vacancies. We're almost fully staffed up.
Well, and I like what you said earlier, because you get all these hate mails from every teacher that left the district saying it's because of you, your comment is Hitler lookalike. I mean, I've gotten stuff like, and I go, wow, that's why everybody's leaving. And so, everybody's leaving. When I look at that, I go, wow, no, I think a lot more people are staying.
Right, so we can have Dr. X kind of go over that data, because he didn't have the opportunity. Let's go back to the,
Yeah, because it's
yes,
completely
to
contrary.
explain it to the community.
Yeah, the first slide from CDE, there is just the teacher turnover rate. Nationally, there was a RAND study that was done. It was kind of an informal survey of building leadership and central office leadership across the country. They indicated about 10%. However, that did not include necessarily those staff members that left the district but then came back or came back in a different role. So it was really kind of an informal survey, and that's kind of what started that. I know that Superintendent Gall had seen the article, and we started having a conversation about that. State average in Colorado is about 19% for teachers for the turnover rate. So obviously, the RAND study and CDE indicate that obviously your urban school districts, your suburban school districts, much higher turnover rates. So, District 11 came in at about 19.6, so close to the state average.
Yeah.
And then the data here is, on D11 gives us our separation reasons, and we can see during the COVID years, there's, some decline there. And then post, 2021 school year, you're gonna see a lot of different reasons, so we categorize some data a little different in that year. But our overall resignations during that year were pretty small. Like most school districts, it was the 21-22, lots of resignations. Coming back from COVID, the challenges of bringing students back into the classroom that you could ask any of our teachers, any of our buildings would share that with you. And I think we're starting to see that drop a little bit. So we'll be anxious to see how this year goes as well in terms of the resignations is the separation. We'll always have our retirements. We'll have our teaching corps that hits that magic years of experience and says, pair is a wonderful thing, so let's jump in. So we'll always have those and in different numbers, and so it's really the big red one that we're watching to see those resignations. But
so if you go back to the previous slide.
No, don't go back yet.
Looking
at this one, the resignation for other positions in 22-23, there are none. That can't be right. The very last column on the right, there's no pink.
We didn't spread it out. Yeah, there are numbers there.
If we have the active dashboard, it will actually drop. We don't have any in 22-23.
How was that?
We didn't have any coded in that data.
You didn't have any resignations for other positions?
Well, this pink is right here. I mean, we have to slide this up. I'm sorry I have to get up, but it's there. It just has to, it has to slide up.
Yeah.
Because of the
it's
way the
there,
ribbons
you
are.
just have to
There.
slide up.
Correct.
Number 19.
I get you. Okay. So if I do it on the computer, I'll see it. Is that right?
Well, no, it's not live.
That's
It's a
a
PDF.
slide that's built inside of Power BI, so it's in a dashboard that Human Resources has, and they can tell you what that number is.
Okay.
The label's covering it.
So going back to just the previous slide, so this indicates that 32.
No, we're at 19.
Yeah, but 32% at Harrison School District, that was the turnover rate at Harrison School District?
Yes.
32%?
Reported to the state of Colorado.
Okay, wow.
What did you just say? The what?
Reported to the state of Colorado by
Okay.
Harrison.
So And when I look at District 11, we have been at the bottom comparatively to the other surrounding school districts. So again, it goes to what Ms. Schoen talked about right at the very beginning, that there are rumors and myths out there that because of some situations that there is a lot of turnover in District 11, and that's not the case. The data here invalidates those arguments. Would that be right? Okay.
If you look at like the percent change over those years, like District 2 there's like 9% variety there. And for D11, it's like 5%. So even when you see that fluctuation, it's not that big of a, does that make sense? Am I,
Yes, it does make sense.
Not huge
Yes.
swings.
Not huge swings, thank you.
Yeah, considering the time we're in where it's difficult to get teachers,
Yes.
we're still right, we're right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Could be better, but we're not as
Right,
bad as everybody try to make it out to be.
right,
And we're right, exactly, truly, where the state average is 19.1 and we're at 19.3, that's.
right. And that's because people that work in District 11 are committed to District 11. They've grown up here. They've cut their teeth here. Their families are here, you know.
That's good.
Thank you for putting all of this together.
Yes, absolutely. The last slide, it's really hard to read because it's really small, is I just want to recognize that, HR continues to expand in how we support the district. And really that all comes to Phoebe and the support that she's given HR. In November, benefits moved under HR, and that's a pretty normal place for benefits to fall. And then in July, educator effectiveness is now a part of HR. So our team continues to expand and provide supports from benefits to educator effectiveness to hiring. And so it's really, truly mirrors what a large district HR is comprised of. So I think they're good changes, it's changes that make sense, and again, we appreciate all of your support.
Can we look at that ESP data too? I mean,
Yes, we have that in case you wanted to know. So we have the same data for our ESP from their retention turnover rate as well as the reasons for leaving. So you can see
Greg,
that.
yeah. Did
Greg,
you
I'll
wanna
let you
speak to
talk to
that?
that one.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't,
Is your data slide?
yeah, I spent a little bit of time here, when we see the turnover rates for our our ESP turnover rates, they tend to tick up a little bit. Again, maybe post-COVID. I'm not sure what 20 may have done to retain, potentially. That would be a question for, I don't know if 20 did some kind of incentive for ESP staff last year, and maybe that's reflected in the data.
That was the COVID year too. Okay.
21, 22. Yeah, well, 2021 and 21, 22 tend to have.
Yeah.
So turnover rates are obviously gonna have lagging indicator. So we're gonna have at least a 1-year lag probably from the first closure, which puts us into the 2021. 21, 22 will be a lag, and 22, 23 most likely will also be a lag year from COVID as teachers and staff come back and things change and how education is delivered and changes districts made during COVID time, closures. So all that's gonna impact the turnover rate. Same with separations, you can see, we also kind of set the data up the same way, just filtered for ESP. Resignations for ESP staff is down. And then the next one I think is exec professionals. Exec professionals, this also, although that rate jumps, mirrors a national trend. Executive professionals leaving. In that same RAND survey, central office administrators believe they were losing almost double the percentage of administrators post-COVID. The challenges of, bringing students back into schools and changing educational environments, that they actually saw higher percentages of administrators leaving than teachers in that RAND survey, so that's kind of reflected here. And then you can see our separation reasons by executive professionals, small numbers, so, and pretty constant for resignations of exec pro.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Any closing feedback or thoughts on this from the board?
No, this is really helpful, thank you.
Okay, Director Art.
Thank you. I just, I want to note that it's certainly cheaper in the
in the long run or even in the short run to retain teachers than it is to hire them. So I'm glad that some efforts are going to be made, especially for our new teachers, on retaining them. Last week we got an update on some schools that were nearly completely staffed. Can you tell us how many vacancies there are for teachers right now?
Yes, there are currently 119, but of those 119, we have 60 in the queue to be hired. So really overall, we have 58 vacancies. And Director Ott, we increased our, last year we were at 85. That's kind of where we stood and had those vacancies. We added an additional 112 positions this year. So you think about the delta and only having truly, once we get this processing, 58 vacancies, and we've received recommendations over the past few days to really reduce those number of vacancies. We are one of the best staffed districts right now in the local area. So that's exciting, very exciting.
We added, increased our.
We increased our staffing for our Projected enrollment. And then our MLO positions.
What was that number?
I believe that was about 80 for our targeted projections. And then right now, we're right about 30 of our MLO.
Yes.
Right about 30 of our MLO.
Am I understanding this correctly? We've increased the number of positions by 80.
Right. Okay.
I thought you said 112.
Well, 80 plus the 30 MLO.
Oh, okay.
The 30 MLO we did.
So it's 112 increase, and then so what was the aggregate? If you give me, what was the total gain? Because it's not just what we were last year. Last year we were down what?
We maintained plus.
Yeah, plus you added.
Plus we added, correct.
So what was the total,
We need to
that
check
total?
those numbers.
I'm talking about- I'm
We'll
not
give
good
it
at
the
math.
chief resource officer.
You know what I'm saying?
Him about what that was.
Yeah, because actually that's part of Brandon's work as well.
Yeah.
He's got his calculator out.
The schools, so that when kids came, they wouldn't have to change classrooms
Right.
anymore.
And so we
They
over.
wouldn't have to wait, right, the teachers right there.
We added 25 classroom teacher positions.
25.
We added 16 FTE. Now again, here's the discrepancy. I'm talking in full-time FTE. There might be some that are split FTE in multiple positions, right?
Yeah.
We added 16 FTE ESL teachers. We added 9 assistant principals. I don't know about ESP staff. So that's the one data point that could be the delta for me.
Right.
And then yes, the MLO positions, which are historically budgeted for differentiated staffing and enrollment needs. Those are built into the budget. They're not all allocated at this time, but they are built into the budget.
But did you say that we increased the number of MLO positions?
No,
Okay.
we
Yeah.
filled,
It's the same.
we filled
Oh,
them.
I see. Okay,
Right,
thank
usually
you.
we just hold on to them and wait and see if we're gonna need them.
Okay.
But the strategy for Superintendent Gall was to go ahead and fill those positions because as we can see today, the students are here. So, trying to find a teacher in our current state is very, yes, very difficult. So principals are happy because they have classrooms with by teachers and children.
They have waiting till October to fill those spots if we have more students in a school.
Correct.
So, okay, thank you for providing that report. Seeing no other questions on this.
Thanks, Tony.
So just for the board at this point in time, we have what's that? Oh, Director Hart, you have a question on this subject matter?
The same one.
Sorry, no, I forget to take that hand down.
Okay. So next week we have a board meeting, possibly an executive session. I'm not sure about that yet. If that executive session happens, I'll have to talk to Superintendent Gall. Then it would be prior to 5:30. Depending on how long that executive session is, we may start at 4:30 to 5:30 in executive session and up here at 5:30.
Is this next week?
Next week. This is something I talked with the board almost a year or so back about recognizing Glenn from the board level for his role in the district. So it's been difficult to get him out here, and he's been traveling and to figure out a schedule, but everything has been arranged, so next week he will be here. Initially, we wanted to surprise him, but it wasn't working out. So he is aware of it, so the board will recognize him with Spotlight on Excellence next week. So if around the community too, if you have worked with Glenn and you want to be here next week, please do. Anything else on? Okay.
Yeah, just.
On this subject matter or a different?
Different.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. for
Go
me.
ahead, yeah.
Okay. Just for the board, it's time for us to renew our membership for CASB. And so just wanting to let you all know that. I don't know what past practice is, if it's a thumbs up or just, I let Melissa know, yes, the cost is $22,000 and then another $750 for access to the policy information that they provide. So just wanting to let you all know that that is part of where our budget, our board budget will be going, is to our CASB membership renewal. So.
Okay.
Maybe you should, there are other organizations, you should probably look into, have someone look into it.
If you wanna look into it and let us know, we'll be glad.
I'm not gonna do nothing.
Well.
Then don't offer.
Okay, thanks for keeping us informed. Anything else on this matter? Any other thing that the board wants to know? Okay, with that, we are adjourned officially at 8:13 p.m.